To start things off, I'd like each of you to reflect on the past 3 years. From your personal or professional perspective, what stands out most to you about the war's impact? We'll start with Anna from Ukraine.
Well, perhaps now I believe that everything is possible because I was just as the majority of people with my normalcy bias and knowing Ukrainian history, knowing that Russia attacked Ukraine back in 2014, I still did not believe that full-scale war was possible in the 21st century, you know, with these bombers, missiles, like real Second World War style combat things. And then it all began on the 24th February 2022. And my main message to people watching us around the world, it is possible, if Russia is not punished, that this will continue, and this will include not just more of the Ukrainian territories or former Soviet countries, but unfortunately this can expand further because unpunished evil grows, and that's what we see. First, Russia started hybrid wars against Ukraine after the collapse of the USSR, trying to push pro-Russian politicians, various Russian agendas, Russian businesses buying Ukrainian resources. Then it went to the annexation of Crimea, Donetsk, Luhansk. Escalation management did not work out, and here we are, 3 years in the full-scale war. So it's not okay to appease, to think about tactical pauses for Russia. That is something that I have learned. No matter how hard you want to hide from this reality, it is already there. And it's not Ukraine or weak Europe or slow America to blame. It is Russia to blame. We should not shift our focus. And for me personally, it's not that much about the support for Ukraine, I don't know, reconstruction of Ukraine, but about the punishment of Russia, I'm sorry, and making Russia accountable for all of their war crimes, not legitimizing them as we observe it right now. From one point of view, it's quite difficult to see what is happening with the White House repeating Russian propaganda messages and Putin taking out of his isolation to the top of geopolitics global. But at the same time, and I'm sure lots of us here from Ukraine will prove that this makes us stronger once again. Just as we were back in 2022, we feel the same like healthy rage and anger that makes us stronger and more resilient now. So that's the lesson, that don't try to hide from the things that frighten you, because it won't help. And what can help is uniting your efforts with people who are fighting against the evil. Evil is real. You know, truth is real. Let's not substitute things.
Thank you for your answer, Anna. Operator Starsky?
So for me, the biggest enlightenment, or I'm not sure how you call it, was understanding of the simple fact that evil is literally when good people do nothing. And I can confirm that, I can prove it, because people who oppose us, and I'm talking about the people who support Russia, who don't support helping Ukraine, providing support to Ukraine. The difference between us and them is the fact that we can act, we can unite. Look outside what was happening today globally around the whole world, in almost every city of civilized countries. We saw thousands and thousands of people outside with Ukrainian flags, with flags of their countries, showing support for Ukraine. We'll never see that happening in such numbers in support for Russia. We won't see that because we are ready to unite, we are ready to act, because I was so much impressed during the first days of the Russian invasion, when people started posting comments of support, when people started asking how to help you, what can we do, how can we join International Legion, how can we bring you supplies, how can we bring you weapons. And this was something that impressed me so much, and this is something that keeps me going, keeps my channel running as well, the understanding that there are people worth fighting for, because we are worth fighting for each other, you know. So that was the biggest thing that I realized. It's very, very easy to help evil win. You just don't have to do anything. Just relax and enjoy your life. And that's when that's when evil wins. Therefore, we must be active, and our biggest weapon is that we are active, we have active position. And generally today I'm remembering the first morning of the full-scale invasion, when we fought Russian elite paratroopers, so-called, and yada yada, in Hostomel. It's when we saw the Russian invaders on Ukrainian land very, very close, basically 15 minutes away from Kiev. The good news, of course, they all died. And today I brought the flag of the heroic 4th Operative Brigade, Rubizh. That is my brigade, where I proudly served for many years. And I'm really proud to have this flag here with me today, to memorize all the heroes who were fighting, who gave their lives, and who keep fighting for Ukraine. So I'm done.
And thank you for your answer, Operator Starsky. Let's go with the Ukrainian Anna.
Oh.
You have Anna from Ukraine. I'll just go Ukrainian Anna and Anna from Ukraine.
Yeah,
I
saw your name. Sorry, I didn't know. I'm not even Anna, actually, so it's even
I think
a
it's
bigger
okay.
offense.
The more Ukrainian Annas from Ukraine,
The better.
The better.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, point is that I woke up today, actually the exact same way I woke up in 22 to Russian bombing. In the morning. So in that sense, I kind of feel like nothing. Last time it was 5 in the morning, now it was 4. So, you know, a little bit of a change. But overall, it's kind of the same thing. And the same fight just continues, like no matter what is happening in the world at the end of the day. And of course, I, you know, like everyone else, have anxieties like about, you know, United States and whether like how our support will, you know, suffer from it, obviously, right? But I have now more people that depend on me, like on my volunteer help, than I did in 22. I have now more people that, you know, that help me than I ever did, despite everything, you know, and just I just don't know. I just have some sort of like positivity that wasn't there a week ago. Maybe because in the elections in Germany, at least, it didn't go as awful as many people feared. And I do believe that maybe Europe will, you know, shake it up a little bit. Because of their fear now of what is going on in the United States. Because let's be quite honest, that even the countries had supported us, they still felt like it was our problem at the end of the day. Like as much as like Europeans supported us, and they, you know, many countries, especially like Baltics, are based as fuck, you know, obviously they support us a lot. And but at the end of the day, like most people still thought that they are protected under the NATO, under the, you know, American you know, win, so to speak, that are protected. And now I see many people are like, maybe if Russia actually attacks us, then the United States will not defend us, and we actually have to like invest a little bit more as well in Ukraine, because they are sort of like a shield and a defender of the free world, of the West as well, and we might as well help them before the war, you know, comes to us, because we cannot really, at the end of the day, we are the biggest army like in Europe right now. Yeah, I mean, we should probably flex a little bit more about that, but yeah, and we are the front, and as much as, you know, as much as the world is a strange place, I still have exact same like faith in our people and in people who support us that I ever did before, and a little positivity maybe wouldn't hurt, I guess. But yeah, at the end, I'm just exactly the same as I was, now that I think about it, with the exact same mindset. I just am a little bit more tired and dejected. but overall, I am the same, and I think we should just go on as we were, because it's not like we have any other choice in Ukraine, you know. And thankfully, we now have the government, at least that, and Zelensky in particular, that at least seems to stand his ground and not sell us out to the powers that want us to surrender and just appease the Russia. So I don't know. We shall see how it fares.
Thank you so much for your response. Rick.
Well, I will also bring some positivity, or just have it, These 3 years taught me a lot. My change. Oh my God, guys! It seems I'm tired already. But I had a long stream last night, just 6 hours, but yeah, not the longest one I usually have. What I wanted to say is Ukrainians taught me so much, and not only Ukrainians, people all over the world, good people who care about the other people all over the world. And that's the members of our communities, guys. We have them supporting us and supporting our army, which is the most important thing right now. And we focus on bad things too much, by the way, and especially, I guess, Ukrainians, when, for example, in 2024, we lost a few hundred square kilometers, and it is still not even the whole Donetsk Oblast for Russians. We were so focused on that, and it felt like we're losing, but we're actually not. We achieved so much in these 3 years. We destroyed Russian fleet. We're totally now owning the Black Sea. We made the Kursk incursion, and now we're controlling part of Russian territory. We developed our own new weapons that even without Russian without the help of our partners, without the aid packages, without the military aid packages, now we can hold the ground and we can stop Russian assaults. So even when we haven't been with any military aid from US in 2024, we were able to hold the Russians, and we are capable of doing that even now. And the future is uncertain, but yes, I really agree with Anna here. We can see Zelensky doesn't want to sell us out. He, in my opinion, the best president that this full-scale invasion Ukraine could have, because all the previous ones will definitely not act so viciously to stand for Ukraine and to really not sell our interests out, to say no, this is not okay. These agreements are not okay. Let's work on some fair agreements. And let's work on some real guarantees, security guarantees. Either it's NATO or nuclear weapons, which is even better, I will say, as a Ukrainian. That's an opinion of many Ukrainians, guys, I will tell you. Because NATO's future is uncertain, nuclear weapons' future is pretty certain. I think it will remain the same. Anyway, I don't want to make you even more uncomfortable with the talks about the nuclear weapons here, guys. And I just want to say thank you for all the support, for all the changes that you brought in Ukraine, and for the lives that you saved, our dear viewers. You did that. You really saved lives. So you probably know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I will stop here. Thank you, guys. It was just a pleasure to have these 5 minutes, and I just wanted to say that we will prevail and we will defeat Russia no matter what, because we have that ultimate resistance of Ukrainian people, and it is just unbreakable.
Well, thank you, Rick. Let's go with Dylan Burns.
It's a really open question. Like, what have you taken from 3 years? But I'll do my best here. I think the first thing that I found is that you can't leave wounds fester and just kind of hope things just kind of work itself out. Because it really does feel like if there's anything the United States, and I'm an American, right, needs to take from this is reanalyzing 3 administrations worth of failed Ukraine policy ever since the Budapest Memorandum was signed and unfulfilled commitments. And this is not just a failure of this war. This is a failure of how we treated certain allies in Afghanistan. This is a failure of how we treated the Kurds during our invasion, our liberation of Kuwait. It's a problem of how we treated the Kurds just 6 years ago during the first Trump administration. It's a problem of American credibility. And if there's anything that I've noticed from the last few weeks of watching Trump do what many of us had warned he was going to do for a year and a half on the campaign trail as he was stopping aid during crucial battles like Avdiivka. I mean, I like this is to me, this is, while it's not a big surprise, if there's anything I've taken from this, is that justice has to serve as the foundation. You can't just allow churches to continuously be shut down in Donetsk. You cannot just allow skirmishes to endlessly go on. You can't allow credibility and deterrence to be undermined and expect the situation to just kind of fix itself. We really wanted just the economic integration between Europe and the United States and Russia to just kind of fix the Russian cultural problem around imperialism. That if they saw big American dollars, they saw this integration, that eventually they would come around to our side because their oligarchs would care about the money, they'd care about the profit, they'd care about these things. But we never made as a foundation for our relationship with the Russians, or the Ukraine, or the basis of, you know, the Budapest Memorandum, what was built on top of it, as Ukraine is a sovereign nation state. Its interests need to be respected. You need to negotiate it with it as such. And we can even see from negotiations that are going on right now that that's the case. One of the big demands the Ukrainians have said is that they have to be at the table for negotiations. They're now not allowed at the table when these discussions are happening with the Russians. For me, it's very hard to imagine these last 3 years of war truly being received as a message by the Russian public that, wow, this was a mistake. This was a bad idea. Invading and losing all of our youth in this horrific war for no benefit to us individually as our prices go up. That's not going to be the message they take. The message they're going to take is, this was a good idea. We got all this land. We got the Ukrainians to submit to us. They didn't even have to negotiate with us. If there's anything that I think that I've taken from the last few years, is that you need to make the Russians, and you need to make really any nation state, respect the others around them as negotiating partners, as someone you have to sit at the table and discuss issues with, as somebody whose interests matter. And when you see how negotiations going on right now, it's America's interests matter, Trump's interests matter, Putin's interests matter, Pete Hegseth's interest matters. Everybody's interest matters, but the Ukrainians, and that's not how you build like a foundation for peace. I also just want to say that I think a lot of people take the system built post-Cold War for granted. I think a lot of people take peace for granted. I think a lot of people take democracy for granted. I think a lot of people take deterrence for granted. The idea that nation states or aggressive nation states are deterred by the fact that they know that if they attack, they'll be hit harder. But if you don't establish that deterrence, if you don't establish that you're willing to defend that system, both domestically when it comes to your democratic institutions or internationally when it comes to geopolitics, then that fragile system could very well break down very quickly. And we're seeing that right now when it comes to deterrence in NATO, and we're also seeing that happen when it comes to civil societies and many Western democracies. I have other stuff, but I don't want to take up too much time for my opening statement.
Thank you so much, Dylan, for your answer. Again, it is just reflection on the past 3 years, your personal or professional perspective, and then what stands out most to you. Let's go with Georgie from Ukraine Matters.
Ooh, reflection on 3 years. Well, there's a lot. There's the personal one. There's the not so personal, more like philosophical one. On a personal side, I guess I reflected on like how much of a mad dog I am. Like everyone, both on the internet and everywhere, like seemingly so cool. Everyone is so chill when they're talking of Ukraine. Then I turn on some of my videos. There's a guy just yelling at the camera, spitting, because in my perspective, those were obvious facts. Because how could Ukrainians demand something so unbelievable as wanting to live? You know, like what a incredible demand to put forward before the world community. Then the perspective that I had was just how the world is despised, ruined, how bad everything is, how cocked everyone is, that no one can take charge, no one wants to take lead, no one is acting responsibly. We're having a lot of these discussions while literal peoples are dying. The genocide is happening right before our eyes. Russia is committing every single war crime possible. Like, and people are just like, well, you know, it's like, we're not sure whether 5,000 helmets is a big enough aggression or escalation. And I felt like I was losing my mind. It felt like this is some kind of weird fever dream, that this is not possible, that humanity cannot be this bad. And it felt that that's it. Like, if this is the way we're going, we're so fucked. But then I started interacting with people. Then I started seeing the people that come out on the streets, people that came to my chats, started asking, saying, like, how can we help? Can we send messages to our government? Like, what are we doing? Like, what's the ideas that we're doing? People started saying, like, donating, like, let's get trucks, let's get support, let's get anything. Oh, Ukrainians are not having the electricity. Let's get stuff going. And kind of slowly but surely, I saw that from this grassroots desire, the general people's desire for some kind of justice, we saw also, and I'm talking mostly as a European, like, I'm not going to comment on the American things right now, but from the European perspective, I saw how that weird world where Europeans were like blind dogs, like puppies, walking around, stumbling upon the unfortunate threat that suddenly started disrupting their peaceful lives, they started realizing that, no, this is the reality. And I think this is the biggest thing that I wanted to say to all of the Ukrainian panels and all of the Ukrainians that are maybe listening to this, is like, thank you. Thank you. Because Ukraine is leading the world in a direction that we need to be. Democracies are not given. I agree with Dylan with that. Democracies are very fragile and they need to be maintained and need to be guided. And it feels that we're still trying to find our footing in Europe, despite all of the wealth. It feels we're just fat blob of money and wealth and laziness, but Ukrainians are giving us a slap on the cheek and getting us going. And I just want to say thank you. And I look very optimistic for the future, because Ukraine has achieved incredible things, as already mentioned. And people that say, yeah, but have been fighting for 3 years, can they still fight further? Well, Ukraine has never been in a situation like this. Russian military is struggling. The Soviet era stockpiles are actually not as much of a stockpiles anymore. A lot of them were burned down thanks to the efforts of the Ukrainian armed forces. And there is a lot of weapons that were not present beforehand and that are now being developed as we speak here behind the scenes. So I look optimistically, despite all of the political aspects that are being right now floated. I see that the actual people that matter, that lead us, that are the leaders in these situations, not just nominal leaders of the free world, but the actual leaders of the situation we're finding ourselves in, they know where they're going, and I am so grateful for that.
Thank you so much, Georgie. Let's go with ATP Geopolitics, Jonathan.
I'll try to be quick, but you know what I'm like. So, from a personal point of view, I got absolutely obsessed with this war because of the burning injustice inside me from day one. Real sense of injustice that has burnt ever since, and is now an inferno that has only been ameliorated, made even greater by what's happened in the last week. It just, everything has been so unfair the whole time, with a bully attacking a smaller country, and all of what we understand morally of what happened, you know, aside from the geopolitical aspects of it. And then to see one of the allies switch sides, I just feel it's just even more unfair now. So that is what drives me, and drives me every single day. And I'm still as committed now as I was then. And I'm going to go down a personal route here, which is that this has driven me to kind of change my life. This is now my job. This is everything I do. And it's more than a job. It is everything about my existence on a daily basis. I live and breathe Ukraine war news and events and everything, to the point where I've been to Ukraine twice now in giving aid, and it's allowed me to meet this incredible crew of people who support the war. All of you guys, to go around Ukraine with Greg Terry, who is standing next to me now virtually, but we have stood next to each other as sort of brothers in arms, and it is this great community that we are part of, but also that all of you out there are part of, and we are driven on a daily basis because of all that I've said to make the world a better place, and we do that through Ukraine, and Ukraine is doing that for us. And so I'm just really thankful it's given me the opportunity to get to know this country better, to understand the world better as a whole, and to see the wonders of the world. As terrible as Russia is in what it does, it's brought out the real positives of humanity in a way that many of us have reacted to this. So I'm kind of, you know, in awe of people on the good side of the coin. And I have to say that I wrote a book once many years ago, a bit of spamming here. A book called Metamorphosis, A Survival of the Fittest Metamorphosis, is part of a series. But part of what I wanted to look at was how fragile society is and how actually easy it is for things to just go completely wrong. And I think this war has shown us how fragile society is right across the globe. And we need to, as many of you have said, we need to be fighting all the time to maintain a status quo of democracy. You know, we have to be fighting proactively to keep our democracy healthy. For, you know, it's just absolutely important. And the last thing I'll say is one of the biggest components of this war, and it's what we are all involved in, every single one of this panel and every single one of the audience members watching this. We are involved in an information war. One of the biggest aspects of this war is the information war. We are in an epistemic crisis. Epistemology and philosophy is a study of knowledge and truth. We are in a crisis now where we don't know what is true and what is not true, and Russia has done a damned good job of capitalizing on that, and we are just left without an answer at the moment. We need to be doing a much better job of fighting false narratives, and that's kind of my calling as I see it. And I think it's actually a responsibility of all of us here to try and fight what I think is a really nefarious and creeping issue for that the world is facing. We need to be able to decipher truth from untruth, information from dis and misinformation. Anyway, that's enough from me.
Thank you, Jonathan. And Greg Terry.
Thank you, Andrew. First of all, I would just like to echo what everyone else has stated and say that I completely agree with it. And I'll just take it down a little different angle so we can maybe form a well-rounded picture here. But over the 3 years, personally, I want to begin by paying tribute to those that have given their lives fighting for us. I want to pay tribute and honor to those that are sitting in trenches right this very second. Cold, wet, freezing. I've lost a lot of friends, man. A lot. And we look at the big picture of geopolitics. We look at Macron sitting and holding hands with Trump right now. We listened to Putin just a few moments ago speaking about partnering together with the United States inside Ukraine for rare earth metals. And we are all absolutely disgusted by it, but we stand strong and we fight against it. But if we ever forget that it comes down to a human being that is sacrificing their life, that it's a pregnant woman being bombed in a hospital, that it's children being blown up, then we've lost our way. So primarily, I want to say my takeaway from the first 3 years is we will never forget the human equation, that the value of life and the sanctity of life that Ukraine values and humans around the world value is way beyond our desire for power and our desire for wealth. And I am so proud and honored. I am an official resident card-carrying American member of Ukraine. I have a resident permit. I have an apartment in Khmelnytsky. I love Ukraine. And those, our brothers and our sisters fighting every day for life. And my encouragement today, after 3 years, is as long as we never forget the human equation, we're going to stay on the right track. It's like Starsky said, to ignore evil is just to let it win. I'm so proud of the unity of people. I'm proud of the unity of Ukrainians that may even disagree politically, whether it be Poroshenko, Zelensky, or Zaluzhny, it doesn't matter. They're coming together, they're rallying together and saying, first and foremost, we can lay those issues down. We're fighting for our nation, and we're fighting for our future, and are fighting for our freedom. So for me, 3 years, it's humanity. And I'm thankful to be partnering with all of you guys to be on the right side of humanity. And I'm telling you, good wins. Evil will be defeated. We must not give up. We'll fight it's like Churchill said, we'll fight anywhere, but we can never, ever give up. Practically, I think over these 3 years, we've learned what actually a strong deterrence and real agreements mean and what they do not mean. I think additionally, we've learned the power of resilience. I mean, remember, guys, early in the war, the Ukrainian farmers with their tractors dragging the tanks out of the fields, and grandpas making homemade Molotov cocktails with their home brew. This is how it started as Ukrainians were fighting for their very existence. I think we're learning what the reality of international cooperation should truly look like and what it does not look like. Additionally, I believe, as Johnny was talking about, that the power, and Dylan, the power of the informational warfare, we're just beginning to learn. It didn't start yesterday. Russia has been doing this since the 50s when Brezhnev went to the United Nations and declared that the United States would be defeated from within without ever a bullet being fired, and we laughed at it. But we see it now happening, and it must be stood against. And finally, I think what we've learned over the 3 years is the power and the ability that if you're fighting for what is right, the ability to adapt. And we've seen the Ukrainian army adapt, change, modify, be creative. I've been in so many crazy places. Dylan, I know you've been in some crazy places as well, where you have seen Ukrainians that are just stinking geniuses in their ability to be creative and to adapt to whatever situation is necessary. So for me, guys, that's where I stand in 3 years. And I say, Slava Ukraini, Gerom Slava, Razom do Peremога. And we're going to stand together until victory. And I love all of you guys.
Greg, as an atheist philosopher to a Christian pastor, amen, brother. Amen.
Johnny, just remember when we were coming out of the city, you were singing "Oh Happy Day, Brother" when I took you past the temple.
Only to make you feel better about yourself, just to make you,
Now, I will tell you this, Andrew, and I let me give you a real story here. Andrew, you hear me?
Yep, I hear you. Yep.
Okay. I'm going to need to leave in about 15 minutes, and maybe that'll give room for Philip to pop in. But I want you guys to know, and I don't care about sharing this. You guys know that about 3 weeks ago, Zhenya and I were under the missile attack inside Odessa. And that hotel, Bristol, is where I typically stay. And that night when we were coming into Odessa, I don't know whether it was divine leading or Johnny, aligning of the planets or whatever I'm going through. And there was just something in me that said, don't stay at the Bristol. And we stayed two blocks away from the Bristol at a different place that we stay at sometimes. And literally we walked around the corner when the ballistics came in. And guys, just so you know, there's no air alarm when ballistics flying from Crimea to Odessa. There's not time enough for it, nor do you hear it. It's not artillery. You don't hear boom. It's just boom. And we came under that attack, and a lot of you probably have seen the video about it, but you need to feel the personal side of this. And I think this will be my encouragement part to all of you guys. And I look forward to partnering with all of you even more as we go forward in the future. But my daughter's in the hospital right now because she's struggling mentally that dad almost got blown up. And I mean, literally, my daughter's laying in a hospital bed about a half a mile from our house because she's 23 years old, and it just affected her that she almost lost her dad mentally. And then if you take that story and then amplify that for millions of Ukrainians and for millions of global citizens that have sent their donations or their volunteers or their love in their hearts, they've got this personal connection. We've got a hurting world. And the best thing we can do is stand together and share love. So in a few minutes, I'll be bumping because I'm going to go check on my daughter. But this is the reality of war. So, in Starsky, I know you're a veteran, brother. And Dylan, you spent a lot of time there. It's impossible to describe it. It can only be experienced, but we do our very best. And thank you guys all for standing with Ukraine.
Thank you for your answer on that, Greg. And now let's go to both Annas and Rick. We'll start with Anna from Ukraine because Anna is also on a time crunch, so I want to make sure we get as much from Anna from Ukraine as possible. And then we'll go to Ukrainian Anna and then Rick. So Anna from Ukraine, all three of you. How has life changed for ordinary Ukrainians, and what do you wish the world better understood?
I think there are a lot of things that changed, and that's quite obvious. And let's start with some very important things. For me personally, and what I hear from different people, it's inability to plan or to imagine your future. It is actually very difficult because you cannot
I
guarantee.
apologize. I might have to run in a couple of seconds to the corridor. I apologize in advance because we have a big glide bomb attack right now. That's why I was checking the window all the time. So I apologize. In just that I interrupted you, but I might have to run to the corridor in about a minute or two. If not, I will stay. Okay, so just so
Okay.
you all know what's happening. Yeah.
No problem.
That is just a bit illustration of what I was saying. This inability to plan anything, your evening, your summer, anything.
Yeah, gotta go. I apologize.
Thank you for stopping by, Anna. We'll check in with you. Yeah, we'll check in with Anna later. Go ahead.
Then war is literally everywhere. And even if the city is not on the front lines, the people are on the front lines. During these 3 years of war, it has literally touched every Ukrainian family. There are family members, there are friends, there are people who are lost forever. And you know, one of the very emotional moments that I remember from recently is a photo shared by my friend who lost her husband, and it was his last photo on Facebook. And he took a shot of a railroad and signed it, "Home is that way." So he is from the Western Ukraine, and he was fighting in the east of Ukraine, and he lost his life there. And this happens every day. I mean, like, people stay there, people choose to fight for their motherland, people choose not to give up. And it is very wrong now to try and demoralize Ukrainians, break Ukrainian spirit by leaving comments like J.D. Vance does: "You cannot win this war, it's too difficult." And I will repeat what Operator Starsky said, because that's important. We've destroyed Russia's Black Sea Fleet. We actually demonstrated how vulnerable Russian borders are, and we control part of Kursk region. We've destroyed a huge part of their oil refining industry. Their economy is collapsing. Their air defense is not working, and they discuss that constantly on their TV. What is wrong with their air defense? What is wrong with people responsible for shooting down Ukrainian drones? Russia is the weakest at this point. It's so wrong to leave it and let it get the territories and demonstrate the world that unpunished evil can continue. And Ukrainians are indeed very adaptable. That is perhaps something that makes us invincible. And people got used to so many things. Like, many of you might have noticed that even bomb shelters changed, and there are a lot of people working there. There are playgrounds for children. Schools have adapted. Cafes have adapted. You know, sometimes people who are very far away from Ukraine, watching videos from Ukraine, may say, "Wow, you're drinking coffee or you're having fun," but that is a very important part of the survival. And one of the things that you actually want after an explosion nearby or a range of air raid alerts is to return back to this so-called normalcy and to remain alive. And I'm very grateful to all the Ukrainians who stay in their cities, who stayed in the country, not only on the front lines, but making our country alive. I know that it's quite dangerous in Kharkiv, and Anna has just had to leave because of the shelling.
Full warm. Yeah, full
Yeah,
warm.
greetings to you. That's
Just
a beautiful city. I love
Yeah.
I love Kharkiv. I have associations with stress. I defended my PhD there. But anyway, it's so beautiful. and beautiful people. They live in Kharkiv, they make it alive, and it's so important to buy, go to school, and at the same time it's hilarious because once again, and thank you for providing this illustration, sometimes my great supporters tell, why did you hide? Because it's a ballistic missile, you don't have time to hide.
Corridor, you know, is the best I have.
Yeah, but sometimes you don't hear the sound, you don't get an air raid alert. And what I also try to explain to people, and they kind of don't like it, but I feel it works, just go around your city, your village, and try to find some bomb shelters that can work for you in case of emergency. And you will be surprised that there are not enough bomb shelters in France, in the United States, or elsewhere. And the places where Ukrainians are hiding, in the majority of cases, were not designed for ballistic missiles coming from Crimea or Caspian Sea. So I am sure that there are so many abnormal things in our lives that we have already adjusted that as a Ukrainian, I cannot identify. But I can tell you that I live close to the center of my city, to the central cathedral, and literally every morning we have military funerals. And every morning begins with a hymn and a prayer for those people. And I hate seeing, I don't know, flowers on the ground. I don't have any romantic associations with that, only negative. And the blackouts. But at the same time, we have went through all of this, and it did not make us feel weaker. We are very determined to end this war because we know we had wars with Russia for 300 centuries. It's not NATO that provoked the war. Long before the United States shaped as a country, we had problems with Russia. We had a very bad life, a prison life inside the USSR. Millions of Ukrainian lives were lost, our intellectuals, best people of the best. And one of the things that I cannot stop thinking about is how different our life could have been if people did not die of Holodomor genocide, if Russia did not kill so many good Ukrainians. But it's not the way to stop the dying, what we hear right now. Because if we let Russia take the territory, slowly get more of the Ukraine, we'll lose more people. Dying will continue. The only thing is that you won't watch videos about that because of censorship, because of Russia banning YouTube or something else.
Right.
This is what they do on temporarily occupied territories. They torture people, they imprison people, they mobilize people and send them in meat grinders. So by letting Russia have these people without any problems, you do not save their lives. You actually sentence them to death. Plus, once again, Russia is the weakest ever, and that is what we know in Ukraine. And if you'd ask any Ukrainian, if we stop and agree on Russia's conditions or we continue fighting, I guarantee you 100%, everyone will say we continue fighting. There might be different conditions, but we definitely need to defeat Russia. We don't want to give them a tactical pause to come and keep killing, and not only Ukrainians. Thank you.
And are you okay to stay a little while longer, or do you have to head out here soon?
I think I can stay 10 minutes and then I will disconnect. I won't say bye, not to interrupt you, but I want to thank everyone for things that you do. And it is the greatest discovery of this war. There are so many good people in every corner of the world who chose to be with Ukraine, because I understand that you could have chosen to turn your eyes away, concentrate on something different. But this justice, this human equation, this understanding of what is true and what is wrong makes you stand with us, and we will be forever grateful. And in case of bad, turbulent times, I guarantee you that Ukrainians will always be by your side too, because we know how important it is to back each other up. And we don't want to live under this, crazy bullies, let's mildly say.
Anna, how can everybody find you, subscribe to you? What's your social media?
Well, my main social media is Anna from Ukraine. That's my YouTube channel. You can find it. And I have quite a big and very supportive community there. But I'm also fighting on X, Blue Sky community, Instagram, everywhere. Anna from Ukraine. Not a very complex name.
And I hope we can continue to work together in the future, Anna. So yeah, whenever you need to drop off, feel free to do so. All right, so we're going to continue with Ukrainian. Yeah, what's up, Greg?
Just before you go to Anna from Kharkiv, let me just say also thank you because I need to get to the hospital.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you guys. Thank you, Merck, for hosting this. Thank you for putting it together. Anna from Ukraine, Kharkiv, Anna, God bless you both, and thank you for all that you do. And Dylan, JP, I love you. Starsky, Rick, I love you.
Nice
Georgie,
has donated
you one of a kind. We watch you head out and head back in. You've got it mastered, my friend. We love you. We love you guys all, and most importantly to the community and for everybody's communities. We stand together. It's going to be tough.
Greg?
Greg Terry Experience on YouTube or Twitter or Blue Sky. It's just my name. And
corrupt, bankrupt man.
I just wanted to say thanks for the 50 hash. Thank you. And David, thank you for the membership. Thank you, both of you. I saw it, even if it was silenced by the rest of the panel members.
The knee, JP. It was the knee.
Yeah. He put his and he proper corrected him in public. And I hope that Trump is burning inside with.
Oh, he's burning.
That's a really good thing. Apparently, I was just reading Alistair Campbell saying he had the right mix of massaging Trump's ego and also, standing strong on certain points. So anyway, that's a bit of topical stuff. I'll shut up now.
Thank you, JP. I love you, my friend. But anyway, thanks to all of you guys, and most important, thank you, community. And Andrew, thank you for the invitation, and thank you for putting this all together. And look forward to partnering with all of you as we go forward to stand with Ukraine. Be blessed.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. As we continue again, the topic, we'll just go back to Kharkiv, Anna. That's awesome. And then Rick, and then we'll continue from there. How has life changed for ordinary Ukrainians, and what do you wish the world better understood? Let's go with Kharkiv, Anna.
I didn't blow up. It's good. We had 4 bombs. I heard 3. No, 4th was far away, it seems. But yeah, I didn't want to go actually. But then, my mom started worrying basically. And she's like, go to the corridor, as if it's going to help. But, she worries. So I went there. It's fine. Yeah. But anyhow, how the life changed? Well, you just saw a little demonstration, I suppose. And that has been the life to, I'm so used to it by now. I'm not even... I don't know, not scared is probably the wrong thing to say, but it's just, it's just such a routine, regular thing, especially the closer you are to the front, the bigger bombs you catch, I suppose. So it's not like that big of a deal, but also at the same time, there is an understanding in most people's minds that I guess it should be in a way. Probably we shouldn't be so chill about it, but we are. It's a survival mechanism for most people. And if you want to have some sort of life that you have to be okay with bombs falling on your head and just run about your day as normal. So, in terms of how the lives changed, most people, at least, for example, in Kharkiv, right, lost at least someone they know. Whether it was a family, friend, or a family member, lover, whatever it is, right, a friend. Most people know by now, lost my father. I lost a lot of my friends, unfortunately, in those in 3 years, and it's been a rough time, obviously, for everyone here. But at the same time, as much as we sometimes like to me in recent days, okay, I will admit, bitch about Americans on X. I did do that. As much as I do that, and I think it's a little bit deserved right now, guys. But I still met absolutely best people I ever did. For example, Dylan over here, right? And I really I met so many people, foreigners as well, who genuinely showed me the best of humanity. So in that sense, I think I still feel, despite everything that has happened, and support from the people who I think matter. And yeah, so in that sense, I just think we should really stick to that notion and don't really fall apart or like get like insanely like upset about the United States essentially siding with Russia right now, as much as it gives people anxiety, obviously, because of the Starlink, because of the aid, because of the sabotage of aid to us, but it's just all of it. At the end of the day, yes, it's terrible, but I expected it, to be honest, and most of friends of mine expected it to be exactly this when Trump won. So it wasn't really kind of like a shock to me. I wasn't as upset as people expected me to be, because I kind of like predicted, all of this happening, and I was prepared for it. And I do hope that we all know that that we still have to go. And like Anna, I caught her speak about it when I got back, about the fact that we really can't afford anything else. We can't live in an occupation in a Russian under torture, rape, looting, deprivation of rights, imprisonment is not something that any sane person can prefer to even to war, even if most Ukrainians now support negotiations of some kind, according to polls, right? It doesn't mean, and it gets manipulated all the time in the Western media. I see that because they present it as if negotiation means we just want to give up and that's it. We want to surrender and we want peace no matter the cost, which is not true, because the exact
David, thank you for the 10 gifted subs. I appreciate that, buddy. Thank you. You didn't need to do all that. I appreciate it.
Don't want to make concessions to Russia, and they do not support giving away our territories, and most of all, they do not support, as what Dylan mentioned, negotiations without Ukraine. So obviously, like 90-something% said that they are very appalled by the the idea of Americans holding negotiations with Russia above our heads, essentially, without us, right? And as cringe as some may found, like Biden, for example, administration for speaking like nothing without Ukraine and all of that, and people laughed at that because it was words, but at the end of the day, that still kind of mattered, because this is better than what we have now, in a sense that I don't think that would be that now we really see a worrying thing about Russia returning to diplomatic relations, to economic relations with other countries, the infamous reset that in Russian policy that American presidents like to do. So I am worried, obviously, about that, because sanctions affected Russia quite heavily. Most of my family, unfortunately for me, lives in Russia. So even they admit how much life sucks right now. Not that I speak with them that much. Mostly my mother does. But it's just that the point is that sanctions did affect Russia. Our attacks on their oil industry, seriously hammered their economy. And I really am obviously anxious that the United States will try its best to remove the sanctions and to amplify the
Anastasia, can I just say, one of the latest things I heard today was that South Korea has started lifting sanctions on Russia. Now, I can't verify that, but that's kind of what you're talking to, which is like it's a permission structure for other nations to go, oh, right, well, let's start doing business again. But
because people in the world. People in the world do follow US's lead, and I only hope that they will stop, to be honest with you, especially in European Union, because the now that lead should not be followed, because following, unfortunately, Trump's America lead is following Kremlin's lead. And I really hope people understand that, and that people will see it, especially in Europe. And maybe with the new administration in Germany, we will maybe have a little bit more support our way. So I'm not desperate, but at the same time, in these 3 years, I learned that there are as many glorious people as there are, because most of my, for example, people who donate are foreigners, 95% of them are foreigners. And I'm very grateful for that. But at the end of the day, you shouldn't over-rely as well, because we Ukrainians know that being backstabbed 20,000 times in the back is something that happened to us from both Europe's end, selling us for Russian gas, essentially, like Merkel did, right? And also United States backstabbing us as well. So we should really all think about it in the sense that we should be prepared for the backstabbing, but we also shouldn't despair because of it. That's my main, I guess, takeaway from what is going on right now.
Thank you for your extended answer. I quick looked. I didn't see anything reputable yet about South Korea, and if anybody can
I can,
refute that, but
there's Russian state media reporting that South Korea is
Okay.
going to be lifting sanctions on medical equipment going to Russia starting February 28th.
Okay.
So basically, anything medically related, but what they're saying is it's not weapons, it's not bombs, it's nothing that's necessarily dual use, but medical equipment.
No offense to South Korea, but like I'm still miffed about the fact that they didn't do shit about North Korea entering the fight. Like I expected them like to do at least something, and we were like, maybe you could sell us the weapons, perhaps. Like don't give it to us, sell it to us. And they're like, nah, we won't do that. Just
They were
good
too
luck,
busy
guys.
trying to overthrow themselves.
Yes, they were too busy
The ironic
declaring
part is
martial
that
law for no reason. Like what
the
the hell is
ironic
going
part
on
is
there?
that the guy that's supposed to be taking the coup, the worst coup in the human history, the stupidest one, he was actually pro-Ukrainian, and it was the opposition
Super
that was opposing
pro-Ukraine.
sending.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
but
the
what the hell was
opposition.
happening? I still don't
But
understand.
I heard that the opposition were supposed to be quite pro-Ukraine as well. So like
Nope,
I don't know.
nope.
Crazy.
The opposition is worried that by continuing to escalate support for Ukraine, they're actually escalating like conflict with Russia, and basically the opposition is a lot more like give peace a chance, etc., etc.
Great.
That's
what I
terrible.
need.
Let's go to Rick now about how life has changed for ordinary Ukrainians and what do you wish the world better understood?
Well, I think our life has become more meaningful. Every Ukrainian found something to fight for, I guess. Maybe not every, okay. There's always some small percentage of indifferent people, even among Ukrainians. Of course, there's even a smaller percentage of ethnics, but we're not looking at them. We're looking at the majority of Ukrainians. Yes, our lives changed in different aspects, like more bombing. Since I am from Makivka, bombing was not something new for me. I've known that from 2014. And still, it wasn't here in Kyiv when I moved here in 2019. And it started here. Yes, we have power outages, we have all of that listed, but we also have the understanding that our life is so fucking short and there's no real safety nowhere. You can be either injured or killed at any second anywhere in Ukraine, even in a basement. That happened too, or in a bunker. And we started living. I see that a lot of Ukrainians started living YOLO, you know, like
True.
yeah, exactly. We basically know that tomorrow may not come, so you need to do everything you want today, and you need not to procrastinate it. Just fucking act, and your nation's survival is dependent on that, on the united resistance of Ukrainians. And resistance is, it could be that most honorable and most respected by us civilians decision to go and defend your country, and so many volunteers, hundreds of thousands of volunteers went there in the beginning of the full-scale invasion, and they keep going there. They keep joining the army, guys. That process never stopped. And all those Russian narratives, when they are trying to show how in Ukraine forceful mobilization is working, you know, and it's so bad, even more people are being volunteered to Ukrainian army than mobilized or conscripted. And you see, it also brings me to gratitude and deep respect to all the soldiers who are defending us now and who has fallen. I went to Maidan today. It's a cold weather, humid and freezing, but people are standing there lit in candles, hundreds of them. And they're putting them next to the flags, to the field of flags. And that field of flags is growing with each day, and now you cannot see a spot of the ground without a flag, and that's the cost. That's the price of freedom that Ukraine is paying, and we always need to remember that. And that is the second part of your question, Andrew. There, what people should realize and understand better is that is the price, and price is hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian men and women who are not only killed by Russians but also lost their lives. I'm a part of Free Azov movement for a year now. Today is actually a 1 year anniversary since I started doing the streams of Free Azov rallies. I go there every week and I talk to the families of the captives and missing in action. And I see hope even in their eyes, and optimism and positivity, and it inspires me so much. And I see if they are not breaking, if they keep fighting and keep having that hope and even some optimism, I have no right to break, and no other Ukrainian has the right to break. So we pay that huge ultimate price with the lives of the best people, but we also are very much united. And now, as Anna said, we are united again as back in 2022, thanks to Trump. So Putin was first to unite us ultimately, and now Trump is doing the same work. Well, basically, he's copying Putin, right? So he wants to be that strong leader, and he's just uniting us again so much around him, and defending our tyrant, in front of the Trump is because what the fuck? It's not for you to say, dude. We have chosen him, and we will get rid of him when the time comes. But right now we need him, and we don't need any Poroshenko or Zaluzhny at the moment as a president. Zelensky should keep being the president. We don't need a fucking election. I want the world to hear us right now. We don't need election right now, because the election will divide us a lot. It will divide us a lot, and we will just start fighting each other, and that's a huge risk for our sovereignty and independence, because Russians will always use that moment to strike again or to just divide us completely. So these are the two things, guys. Please remember that soldiers on the front line are relying on you. I think everyone here is raising funds for Ukrainian army, or raised at least once. And Georgie is doing the campaign with Car for Ukraine, the huge one, like one after another. Georgie, big respect to you for keep raising funds for the trucks for Ukrainian army. It's so important. And yeah, guys, as I told you, you saved some lives, because with every donation you contribute to the truck that will get the soldiers out of the positions faster, and or to the drone that will help them to see the enemy coming closer, and they will also be able to react faster. So all of that saves their lives. And direct way to save lives is contribute to medkits initiatives. Tourniquets, combat gauze, you donated to that a lot, so you literally saved lives with those. Well, with the hands of medics, of course, but you contributed to that. So always remember about that, and remember that it is really important for Ukraine to receive donations, and I know that it's not always easy to keep the pace since we ask for more and more, because this war is greedy as fuck, but we have no other choice, and we will keep working on that. You guys are awesome volunteers. Thank you for standing with Ukraine. I'm talking to you, Dylan, Anna, Georgie, Jonathan, and Starsky, Andriy. You guys are inspiring me a lot, so thank you for your service too. And of course, most importantly, yeah, thank you for your service, Ukrainian defenders. Without you, we would be in shackles right now, or shot in the back of the head. So we're get there slowly, but surely we're getting to our victory. Peace. I'm done.
Thank you so much for your response, Rick. And now we're going to go to Operator Starsky, Georgie, and Dylan for a military-related question. Let's start with Operator Starsky. How would you describe the current state of Ukraine's military efforts, and what are the biggest challenges right now?
Currently, Ukraine receives a lot of ammunition. I mean, a lot of artillery shells, 155 millimeter artillery shells specifically. Why those? Because we require less 155 millimeter shells than Russians require 152 millimeter shells, according to their doctrine and their technologies. I talk to different guys currently at different spans of the front line, near Pokrovsk, near Liman. They say they have a good supply of artillery shells. They have good supply of smaller arms. We're not even mentioning them, but things like guided weaponry, different missiles, HIMARS as well. That is very inspiring. Also, recently we received Mirage aircraft. Also, we expect to receive Gripen, because Gripen are very nice in terms of being used on the unpaved strips. So, looking forward to have them as well. So at this very point, I would say that we require a lot of international support, and unfortunately, it's not the case. One thing I wanted to mention is Ukraine became absolute leader in terms of production of drones in the world. That is that is confirmed. That is proved. As of 2024, we built more than 100,000 long-range drones. We built 2.2 million FPV drones for Ukrainian army. That is literally 2024 alone. And we currently dominate the battlefield in terms of drone warfare. I talked to Viper from the 42nd Brigade, and he said that on their specific span of the front line, because on the others where my guys are stationed, the situation is a bit different. But on his span, Russians, even though they continue attacking every single day in big numbers, there can be 10, 15 attacks a day, but they can rarely approach Ukrainian positions at a distance that would be shorter than 300 meters. Or roughly 1,000 feet. So that is literally possible due to the drones. The drones are overwhelming. And again, if we compare this to 2022, when Ukraine was losing in terms of drone, Russians had Lancet drones, Russians had plenty of Shahed drones that were bought in Iran prior to the full-scale invasion, then at this very moment, Russians cannot compete, literally, which is great. So at this very point, we need international support. Why do we see the picture that we see currently? So people must understand one very, very important thing. Russia is approaching its collapse. According to all the experts, it is estimated that 2026, Russia will face the biggest shortage in terms of artillery, tanks, armored vehicles, and finances, because at this point, Russia is spending 1/3 of its annual budget on the war that they cannot win. 2022, Russians having approximately 200,000 personnel, they captured enormous territories. They could make 1,000 square kilometers a day of gains. And eventually they lost those territories because those 200,000 men were not enough, as they realized after that. And at this point, their personnel in Ukraine is 4 times larger than in 2022, but their gains are not comparable. Russia is spending, again, tremendous resources on their military industry, but what are the gains? What are the results? Ukraine obviously lost several smaller towns, which, again, Ukraine didn't lose any major city yet in 3 years. But we anticipated that because of different problems with international support and military supplies and yada yada. But Russia is approaching the critical point in middle 2026. And the reason why we see that shit hitting the fan between the United States and Europe is because currently Russians understand that they're running out of time. They need either to attack and continue their advance as fast as possible and gain as much territory as possible, which they cannot do. Their usual gains, if we can call it this way, is approximately 10 square miles on a daily basis against 1,000 square miles in 2022 when they had less personnel. Or they understand that they need a pause, and they need a pause to resupply, to refurbish vehicles, to restore their supplies and things like that, which again they cannot do much due to the international situation. So they need some kind of actor, some kind of agent of influence that would do that for them. Russian reputation is absolutely and completely destroyed. They need somebody who would bring them back to G8, who would remove the sanctions. One of the recent, let's call it gossips, okay? But this gossip is also correlating with my opinion that it's very, very possible that Russia will be trading those minerals with the United States instead of Ukraine. So currently we need international support. The good news is that Europe becomes stronger. Europe is waking up. Germany, I applaud Germany. Recent elections were very good. Surprising fact to me personally was that Elon Musk's call to the AfD actually did not help them, but they lost a couple percent. If we compare the results of the election to the exit polls that existed before that. It's surprising against, I think that it shows a lot of changes in people's mentality and perception of such oligarchs as Elon Musk. So very, very important to remember that Ukrainians need the international community to keep talking. The very reason Ukrainian nation keeps fighting for its existence nowadays, and Ukraine still exists as a country, as a functioning state, is because people don't forget about Ukraine. They keep talking, they keep raising awareness, and there's a lot of people who care and who continue fighting and supporting Ukraine.
And thank you so much for your answer, Operator Starcy. We're going to go to Georgie and then Dylan. Again, the prompt is describing the current state of Ukraine's military efforts and what are the biggest challenges right now. Georgie.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to take a little bit different angle from Starsky just to kind of more talk specifically about warfare. Well, I would like my Ukrainian friends to close their ears because this is going to hurt. What we need to understand is warfare is very counterintuitive to how we generally think. Like human brains are hardwired for instant gratification. And what we don't think about that often, unfortunately, is that General Syrskyi is not fighting a war for the well-being of Pokrovsk. He's not fighting a war to preserve and control of Kramatorsk, Slavyansk, even Kharkiv. He is trying to win the war. So, and that comes with a cost. And General Syrskyi came in at a very unfortunate time when Ukraine was depleted of its resources. There was a huge lull after that with the delays of the supplies from the United States. So after Zaluzhny, Syrskyi came in basically in a big empty field with nothing there. And he needed to try to get it salvaged. I would not say that he did a good job, but he did not a super bad job. What I want to underscore that over the last year, despite the fact that if we look at the chart and see how much Russia gained territories, they didn't gain that much. But what did happen is that Ukraine pretty much annihilated within a year the stockpiles that the Soviet Union was stockpiling for over 50, if not 60 years to fight the rest of the world. It's gone. It's just annihilated. They still have some things running for now, but Ukraine has been stellar. The defense has been stellar. And if you look at it this way, if you are in a favorable position in an attrition war, then if your goal is to win the war and not to defend specific territory, be it Avdiivka, Ocheretine, be it area around Pokrovsk, then you suddenly start thinking, well, if you're dealing these insane damage to Russian war capabilities, maybe, just maybe, we can, for now, take a wound, a hit, give some land, unfortunately lose some men, and we get to fight another day. That is the awful truth about warfare. And the most painful that was during the last year was that majority of the territory that was lost by Ukraine, the big ones, and we're talking about relatively small scale of the territory that was taken. We're talking about Avdiivka, we're talking about Ocheretine, was actually the command fuck-up. The Ukrainian command fuck-ups were the main cause of those losses. It was the fact that there was a bit of a loss of control. There was not a proper rotation system set up. There was units that were not properly trained that were sent to the front lines. It's all of those messes ups that could have been prevented if there would be a little bit more control. There was a huge outcry in the Ukrainian society about this, and it's been approached better to an extent that even someone like Yuri Butusov is like a hawk on Zelensky. He hates his guts. He's gonna blame all the world's, like, he tripped on a stone. That was Zelensky that put that stone in there. That's Yuri Butusov. And even that guy is acknowledging that with the new reform, there is a change for a betterment. And we really see that with the new people coming in, like Drapati, a very well-known general, very respected. He came in, he said, he helped to stabilize Kharkiv direction when the Russians tried to attack. They got jack shit. Yeah, Volchansk, unfortunately, now is a pile of rubble. The glorious city that first met the Russians and got all of those images where the population just kicked the shit out of the Russian trucks that tried driving through that city. Now it's a pile of rubble. Absolutely terrible. War crime. Incredible. But it was stopped dead in its track because Drapati came in. Now he's also in charge of the ground forces. He said, okay, I'm going to try to also to take responsibility of the eastern flank. I'm going to take responsibility of Pokrovsk. Situation in Pokrovsk is not good. It's not good, but it's being stabilized. It's being more controlled. We don't see major screw-ups. There is still Russian attacks because the concentration of resources that Russia has there is insane. But it's better. Everyone looks at it as like, it is better.
Yep.
So
100%.
the point, the point that I want to make is that majority of what Ukraine, quote unquote, lost, if you believe the Western media, was just errors, painful errors, very nasty errors. But Ukrainians are learning and are getting those errors fixed. And the fact that Russia lost so much during this last year, and every expert is now stating that 2025, 2026 is not going to be like 2024. There is no more stockpiles. Maybe if China will openly support Russia, then we can say that there might be comparable, but not North Korea, not Iran, no one has the same capabilities to get supply Russia to fight the way that it's fighting. And from what I know, with what Starsky said with the drone program, Ukraine said they're going to make 1 million drone last year. They made 2.2. This year, Zelensky says we're going to make it even more. We thought that there's going to be a drone for every single Russian on the territory of Ukraine. How about 5? So I think that if we're looking in a military sense, then Ukraine took some painful hits, took some really nasty blows, but they keep on fighting, getting up, and I think there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Thank you so much for your answer, Georgie. Dylan Burns.
You said Georgie and then Dylan. Oh yeah, he finished it.
Yep, that's you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's me. So the first thing I want to say, it just has like a prerequisite for this conversation. When you're trying to listen to other people talk to you about the war, and you've been following it for a bit, and they're just tuning in, and the only mechanism they know how to discuss the war is through peace, this is not somebody who and this is just me being blunt, I think cares too much about the locals, cares too much about the Ukrainians. Because it's not that Ukrainians don't want peace. In fact, I think when people say this, it's kind of like redundant. It'd be like if, we were having a discussion about the Vietnam War, and someone was like, okay, yeah, but do you think America has a right to exist? What do you mean? Of course America has a right to exist. Of course everybody in the war, everybody fighting the war wants peace. Nobody likes war. It's a question of building a foundation that's just enough that people can live with the peace. It's about building a structure which leads to this not happening again, because there's strong enough deterrence that it's going to make any bad actor think twice before acting. It's a question about making a civil society where people can create a nation that is better for their children than it was for them, which is what everybody wants for their children, right? And so just talking about it and just the peace context, I think it's kind of almost like treating the war like a tourist. You just want to kind of be there to hear mission accomplished, everybody clap, and then you can ride off into the sunset like it's a storybook, and you just finished the Ukraine book. You don't really need to retune into the country. It's all solved. You can go figure out whatever other stuff you want to deal with. And so we need to pay mind to these people. We need to pay attention to these people, because these are the people who are not only, I think, not going to be giving you the nuance you need, but these are going to be the people who are most eager to sell Ukrainians out. Because the reason they don't talk about the civil society, the reason they don't talk about building a just foundation, is because these are not things that they value. These are not things either because they have not realized the value of the civil society, because they have not realized the value of not being occupied, because they've never had to face that personally, either due to being sheltered or any other reason. But they don't value. Yeah.
Can I ask you about this? Because I find this really interesting, because words are really important, and you've talked about peace versus a just peace, and I have a feeling there are these definite memos that are going out at the moment, particularly in the American sphere, where they're saying talk about peace, and talk, but they don't mention justice at all, which you very clearly said there. And also when they talk about killing, and Trump is a big one for this, he talks about the killing of soldiers, but never about the killing of civilians. So do you think that this is also a very purposeful use of language that goes on? I know I think you were talking about like people in general that you maybe come across in the information spaces.
It's absolutely, it's purposeful. It's I don't like it because it's dishonest compassion, and I hate dishonest compassion. I prefer when I talk to somebody and they're like, look, I don't give a fuck about Ukraine, okay? Ukraine, Schmookraine, Cossack, Wotsack, I don't give a fuck. All I care about is grilling every day and paying as little taxes as possible. See, that's something I understand. I'm an American. I've lived next to those people my whole life. I can, but when somebody comes to me, it's like, no, I actually care about the Ukrainians, which is why they should have taken the Istanbul Agreement, because then it would have stopped them. And it's like, okay, I don't actually believe this out of compassion. I believe you just found another way to act like you're being a good guy, while making a selfish argument that you just don't want to pay the taxes, or you don't want to send aid, or you don't want to do that. And I think that this also gets to a point of dishonesty, because I think when you're lying about your intentions, and you're saying that there's a point of compassion, it leads to worse discussions. Think about how much time could have been cut off of Piers Morgan's show if all the people who didn't actually give a fuck about Ukrainians just, I don't give a fuck about Ukrainians, I just want to send more money to Israel. Or I don't give a fuck about Ukrainians, I just want to do X, Y, and Z. It would save so much time for us, and it would just make the conversations so much more honest. Now, the question I think originally was about like the state of the war at this point. Now, since the start of the war, the odds were against Ukraine. One of the main reasons I came to Ukraine in the first place is because the experts got it so wrong. Not only was Ukraine never supposed to be invaded in the first place, but if they were to be invaded, they weren't supposed to last more than a week. And both of those outcomes have not come to pass. So I don't know how much I'm going to trust those same people who got it wrong so drastically to tell me now that there's no hope, that there's no way that Ukraine could do X, Y, and Z. And I also just know that if we were to force terms on the Ukrainians right now, you could actually end up undermining their position. If Zelensky, and you know, I am not Ukrainian, so I can't claim to speak to Ukrainians, but I've gotten the impression that if Zelensky was to go out tomorrow and say, guys, we're giving Crimea, all of Donetsk, all of Luhansk, all of Kherson, and all of Zaporizhia to the Russians. We're giving back the city of Kherson. We're giving back we're going to do this. We're going to take this denilitarization. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Zelensky would not last in office very long. And not only would Zelensky not last in office very long, but then that means the Ukrainians would be fighting each other. And not only that means not only are they not just fighting the Russians, they now have to fight each other. And then it's going to be easier for the Russians to follow up and destroy a divided nation, which is already 1/4 of its size. The only reason Ukraine has been able to stand so long is because it has been remarkably united, which isn't super remarkable given the circumstances, but the point is that unity is super important. And so if you force an unjust peace on the Ukrainians, you can also form cracks in the defense, which has held up so long. Don't mess with something if it ain't broke, right? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's true when it comes to the strategy and dividing your team. As for the last thing about like the state of the war currently, it is true that Russia has dried up a lot of their reserves. It is also true that if you look at Russia's ammunition intake right now and what they're firing, 50% of it's North Korean. 50% of their shells are North Korean. If it wasn't for the North Korean shells, the Russians would not be able to continue the offensive if it wasn't due to the Kim dynasty. But also, I don't know when we talk about like, oh, the reserves are depleted. That's true. Also, Western old Soviet reserves are depleted. All the old Soviet stockpiles we used to have in Eastern Europe and places like Romania and Poland, all of those old shells are gone. We've fired basically every single one of those. Most of the shells that are still left on the international market for 122 millimeter shells, most of those are gone. Most of them have been dried up. And the ones that aren't, I'm just going to be frank, that there hasn't been enough aggression to try to get those last pieces of stockpile. So it is true that the Russians are not swinging as hard as they used to because they just don't have the ability to, but it's also we don't have the same strength to dig in because we don't have the same supplies anymore. So it's going to be a question of what resources can we dedicate to our production capacity at this point, because we can't pull out of legacy supplies anymore. Who has the resources to invest and continue to see that investment reaped, i.e., 800 shells this year, 800,000 shells this year, 1 million shells next year, 1.2 million. Who can win that race and who can win that defense math? But that depends on continued investment, and the United States obviously is a problem right now.
I get frustrated, Dylan, with the number of people who dismiss North Korea as like, oh, they'll just be, they'll be cannon fodder. But the problem is, well, yeah, but they will still require resources to expend, and they will still require Ukrainians to die in order to kill them. They're just, and my worry is that if Russia can tap into more and more North Koreans, even if it costs them an awful lot in whatever they're paying for them, and that's the same for equipment, then it prolongs the war and expends those really valuable Ukrainian lives and Ukrainian bits of kit as well. So I don't underestimate the importance of the North Koreans here.
I don't know how much the North Korean soldiers themselves are the big contributor. I think on a small scale tactical level, like around Kursk, there's probably some, like 5,000 to 10,000 men. Okay, you can't. If 5,000 to 10,000 men attacked me, I think I'd be fucked. So yeah, obviously that has an impact. But I think the biggest impact is going to be how North Korean industry works. It is a slave state,
and that's what I mean.
Make your people work 7 days a week, 24-hour shifts, just grind them into the dust. We can't do that with American companies. We can't increase the hours in American companies in the way North Korea can. And their whole way of war is just mass, cheap shells and steel being thrown at the enemy. If they were to go to war with South Korea tomorrow, the first thing they would do is fire millions of shells at every major urban population center, excluding Seoul, which means that they have tons of artillery. That's the big thing they've given Russia. As even if 1/3 of those shells don't explode because they're shit, or like, you know, Kim hasn't like kissed it properly before it's sent to the front, whatever it is, 2/3 of those shells still exploding. They send 2 million shells. That's still like 1.5 million shells, 1.4 million shells that explode and kill troops. It's, I mean, they've sent like, I think it was like over 2 million shells, or going near to 3 million shells
So
in
the claim from people
2024,
like Booth,
which is more than the entire Western alliance. And that's one country.
the claim of people like Budanov and others is that North Korea provided 50% of Russia's artillery ammunition, which is absolutely staggering. And this is, I mean, that's the extended problem that I see with North Korea. Now, it depends how long they can keep doing that. But if you're going to give them the natural resources to build that stuff, and if China's helping, and then, yeah, as you say, they've got slave labor to be able to do that, then this is a major problem. And I think it's something that the West has not dealt with. And I think they've not dealt with it, as I've said before, they've not dealt with it because it's been in Kursk. And I think Russia have been quite clever to only utilize the North Koreans directly in Kursk as part of that Article 5 equivalent that they signed with North Korea, which is, if we're invaded, you can come and help us. And that was all very well planned out, and that kind of gives an excuse for the West not to get too annoyed with the North Koreans being utilized. And I think that's a real issue, because we've let them off the hook there just because of a legal bit of paper.
And exactly, Kyle, let's get into that a little more. I was going to go to you next, Jonathan. This will be for Jonathan, Starsky, and then Georgie again. From a political and strategic perspective, how has global support for Ukraine evolved? What are key geopolitical shifts shaping the conflict? Let's go Jonathan, then Starsky, and then Georgie.
Well, we can't not talk about the United States, really, can we? I mean, there's no way we can not talk about it. I mean, I have to say, I called it. You know, not that it's too, I mean, for someone like me who's always been critical of Donald Trump and his transactional nature that sees things in a very short-term manner, then I guess it's fairly obvious to call it, but some people were really holding on and no, this guy could be good. And even people who were critical of Trump were saying, oh no, give him a chance, that actually this could end up being the right thing in the long run, or whatever. No, he has literally changed sides. And I think what's underwriting that is, well, there's several things going on there. One is his transactional nature, where he sees things in a very material, tangible way, where it's like, right, Ukraine, this is a problem. We've given a bunch of stuff to Ukraine. I want money back for that, and I want to come away from this quids in. I want to come away from this materially benefiting from this war in Ukraine, rather than understanding benefits in long-term strategies, because he doesn't understand stuff, right? The man doesn't read, right? If you don't read books, like I've said plenty of times on my streams, like I've read 15 books on Ukraine and Russia and the war in Ukraine just in the last couple of years, right? So that my knowledge base is good enough so that if someone tells me some bullshit about Ukraine or Russia, I can say, well, actually, I've got a great knowledge base that I can draw from to be able to fact check that and to say, I'm not too sure. At least I need to look to see if that's justified or what you're saying is justified, and we can do some work here. Donald Trump doesn't read, right? So he gets all his information from what people tell him. And the people around him are Project 2025, Heritage Foundation people who are deeply connected to Budapest, actually, in Hungary, and Viktor Orban and the Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump Jr. orbit, which is Elon Musk, David Sachs. These people are just mired in disinformation and ideology that's based in Project 2025. So what is going on at the moment is Project 2025 is being delivered, and that is being delivered to the letter by this Trump government. Now, Trump himself...
Wait, Jonathan, may I interrupt you here for a second and ask a question?
Of course.
I've read from one Ukrainian analyst that actually Project 2025 is not being delivered as it was promised. For example, in Project 2025, he states he's read it, and he says that they actually have there the points to increase military production and military budget of US in the next 5 years. Instead, they are decreasing it by 8% every year they decided to do it. So is it true? Did you read that project?
Well, yeah. So I've read. It's 900 pages. So I don't declare to have read it, but I've read summaries of it. And there are lots of different authors that do different chapters, and many of those authors are actually in place in position like Vought and others, and Stephen Miller's all to do it as well. Some really, I think, problematic people. I don't quite know what's going on with the decision to cut back the military, because Pete Hegseth's got this order to cut back 8% per year for 5 years, which is somewhere between 35 and 40%. And at the same time, Donald Trump said the other day in a presser or in a kind of an interview that he's going to speak to Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, and they will agree to, and he's sure that they will agree to cut their militaries by 50%. Meanwhile, in reality, Russia and China are increasing their military expenditure. China is doing it on the secret by actually hiding some of their military expenditure in other pots and whatnot. And yeah, so I was probably being a bit overzealous in saying they're following it to the letter. I mean, it's a massive document, and actually there will be elements where they won't be able to, but they are, believe you me, that is the ideology behind what they're doing now with the clearing out the government and changing the judiciary, like all of those ideological things that are happening in the government, almost all of them appear to be coming from Project 2012. And the point I was going to make is that you had these, I say had because I think that tension is really disappearing. You did have these two worldviews in the Trump government, where you had people like Keith Kellogg and, to a degree, Marco Rubio and Mike Waltz, who are kind of pro-Ukraine, know a little bit more, right? And you look at Marco Rubio over the last 3 years has generally been quite pro-Ukraine, right? And then you've got the ideological worldview around Trump, the Project 2025, Stephen Miller, but then the adjacent people like Tucker Carlson, Don Trump Jr., Elon Musk, David Sachs, et cetera, et cetera. And they have been in tension with each other. And what has happened is the ones around Trump have won that. And Keith Kellogg is the last one, and he's been sidelined. He was sent to Kiev on his own, basically, and then they cancelled his press conference. Meanwhile, Marco Rubio has been threatened, basically, that if you keep going along the pro-Ukrainian line, you'll be losing your job to Rick Grenell. And then you've got these other people who is like deeply anti-Ukraine, et cetera, et cetera. So you're having this battle that has been won. And the kind of Ukraine hawks, and I don't mean that pejoratively, I mean that as a good thing. The Ukraine hawks in the Trump administration have lost the battle to these other ideologues, and that's what's happening, and that has meant that they've changed sides. So the question is, why has that happened? So we can ask whether Trump is being badly advised, whether he's just completely ignorant, or whether he's actually compromised. I would argue all three of those, and I would argue that the people around him are actually compromised. We can argue what compromise means, but there are definite connections of Project 2025, as I say, through Budapest to Russia. And this is a problem. So the rest of the world have to go, right, we need to cut you off now because we cannot manage this situation with kind of taking you guys into account from a European and allied point of view. And now we're hearing, and I was just seeing this earlier, that Friedrich Merz, probably the new chancellor for Germany, is looking at creating a NATO analog, parallel from within Europe. Whether that happens or not, et cetera, but there's talk about that, which means if there's talk about that, then there are genuine worries that the US may not be a reliable enough partner even to be in NATO, and we need to just kind of recreate NATO or create a parallel. And that's deeply worrying. But the good part, and I'll finish off with this, the positive of Trump doing all this is Europe has united, and they've realized that there are some serious lacking in Europe. There's now the attempt to find all sorts of monies in Europe to beef up defense and support Ukraine, if at all possible, like completely without the US. The question is going to be, how much leverage does the US have over Ukraine, such that Ukraine are willing to prostitute themselves in terms of minerals to the US because they are so desperate for US support? Do the US have like some fundamentals of support that literally Ukraine cannot do without? And I think that's kind of where we're at.
Well, thank you so much for your
Jonathan, I truly don't know what it all could mean, as you said, but I give you my heart.
Sorry, what was that,
Op-
Georgie?
He gave you his heart to Mars.
Oh,
Operator Starsky, changes in the geopolitical situation. Oh no, you're living in Germany now, correct? And
Yeah.
so there was big elections, and just kind of talk about all that if you could.
Yeah, well, from what I can say, Germans are very, very much involved, and German media often talk about Ukraine. I hear on the local radio when I'm driving my car, they always talk about Ukraine in the newspapers, etc., etc. So it is good. But generally speaking, if we want to know how did the international support for Ukraine change over time, then we got to check out the polls. And the recent polls show, of course, that the number of people who want to support Ukraine until the withdrawal of Russian forces declines, while the number of people who want peace in Ukraine at any cost, even considering losing Ukrainian territories to Russia and pleasing the Russian dictator, this number of people increases, which is probably natural, but again, it also shows the influence and the power of Russian propaganda over people. Because again, we didn't fight the Russian hybrid warfare, Russian informational warfare well in European countries and in the United States too. One of the biggest proofs of that is the fact that Tim Pool recently restarted his channel on a YouTube. It's now officially sponsored on a YouTube. That's why I make such conclusions. Yes,
wow.
Mr.
No, I just wanted to say that, yeah, I mean, the guy was like busted basically, right, for taking money. So it's not a speculation that he was getting money from Russia, but an actual fact of the matter. And he's continue going. Like nothing happened. And this is like, I will have to go like quite soon, but there's a lot of stuff I could, edit up. But I've been raging on Twitter about how right I was about Trump for a long time now. And if anyone is interested in my opinions on that, they're there. But unfortunately, I think we're now seeing the kind of like the crisis of not taking Russian propaganda seriously. And not seeing it as really a threat that it was to the Western world and to United States in particular. Unfortunately, thankfully, like UK, Germany, and France kind of like avoided Le Pen and AfD and Reform and all of that shit. So at least we have something positive to speak there. But in terms of United States right now, this is truly have been something I've been pointing out ever since I started to be invested in the United States. Like knowing people from there since 22. I don't think I knew a single American before 22. But now obviously I'm invested in all of that, and just seeing the amount of like straight up Russian propaganda, like Solovyov style, translated in English, just being spread everywhere. A number of like all sorts of they infiltrated all sorts of things, like gym bros, like red pill, all sorts of like communities that have very little to do with like politics, and still all of them propel Russian propaganda. Like people like Tate, for example, if sorry for mentioning that, but it's just that people like that are incredibly effective in like first of all, spreading Russian propaganda, and second of all, like basically making so many younger people, especially in the United States, and men in particular, right, invested in voting for Trump, right? And and that all of that has been unaddressed. And when you bring it up, people think you're mental. That they don't treat this like as an actual serious attack on the Western world that it is. And yes, it's done through cringe lords, like for example, red pillar states and I don't know, like fitness trainers or some shit. But it's effective. It's effective, and it won Trump the election. Elon literally is a Russian propaganda machine now, 24/7, and he has the biggest megaphone in the world in terms of I remember that study that said that Twitter is the biggest news information for a lot of Americans. And now all of them and he also uplifts himself like mental, like all of his stuff gets like so much attention, while Ukrainians don't get much of anything, like all pro-Ukraine, like, you know, voices. And it sometimes feels like an uphill sort of battle that you cannot possibly win, because the owner of the fucking thing is Elon Musk. And yes, he's now having like mental breakdowns because he's upset at Zelensky being more loved than he is. But you know, it's just yeah, it's just quite a difficult situation, and I have felt myself being a little bit drained, not gonna lie, but just the amount of like Russian influence that is being permitted in the West and not taken with any sort of like seriousness. And yeah, I think maybe I have hope that many people now will like at least open their eyes a little bit to that, due to the how blatantly like Trump administration is pro-Russian. It's not like they're not even like trying to pretend. Like they can't even get this fucking orange overlord to say that Russia attacked us. That they have to like torture them on Fox News with sticks to make him like admit who invaded altogether. So we are like at that point, unironically, at the point when they can't even
on Fox News. Just imagine.
Yes, on Fox News, they're like, well, it's fair to say that Russia invaded. Yes, and he's like, it's a very complicated situation. I am tired of this shit. And you're like, bro, like they asked another dude, the one that doesn't wash his hands, the Minister of Defense or something like what's
Pete
his called?
Hegseth.
Yeah, that
Oh,
fucker, right?
Nice tip.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know your opinion. We all remember this interesting period of our lives when we were on Twitter. Someone is still there. Me personally, I quit. When they started throttling they started throttling the pro-Ukrainian channels, or generally channels speaking, you know, the unengaged, objective information. So the question is, do you think that the same thing may happen, for example, on YouTube, considering that YouTube and Google in general is generally a United States-based company?
Could perhaps be. Obviously YouTube is not owned by Elon Musk, so that's a bonus, obviously. And I can't tell, to be honest, like just how influential that will be. I don't think it's as easy to do because, like I said, I genuinely think that Elon bought fucking Twitter with his Russian oligarch pal together, specifically for that reason, to first of all assist Trump in his campaign and his victory, but second of all to straight up Russian bots galore. Like there has never been like as many Russian bots.
I think you're right, Anastasia, because I don't think Google would do that because it will hurt them financially, and that's going to be the main raison d'etre for their existence, really. Whereas Twitter, as you say, is something else for Musk. It is both his toy, but it's his agenda. It's his platform for his own personal ideology, and it drives everything that he stands for. Can I just sorry, I've got to shoot off in a second, but
me too.
I just wanted to reply to Rick, actually, because I've just been thinking about this, and I've just scanned through the whole chapter on the DoD, Department of Defense, in Project 2025, and it is very much spend a whole lot of money reforming, which they were looking at. There were hints they were going to do this, but I was thinking, like, what's going on then? And I'm pretty sure it comes down to the $2.8 trillion that's going to be put on. They want to raise a debt ceiling in the US, just to get a bit political about the US. Essentially, they want to give tax cuts to the rich. That is one of the big things that they are going to be doing. That is one of the driving signature policies that they want to put through. Not only did Donald Trump, is his previous tax break for the rich going to run out to be renewed, but they want to renew that and make it deeper. So they need an extra $2.8 trillion to do that. That's why they wanted to raise a debt ceiling. They were unable to raise a debt ceiling because certain Republicans voted against that, who are like small government people. So in order to raise a debt ceiling, this is why also they're trying to make all these cuts as well, because they want to move it from Medicare and Medicaid and and pay rich people effectively. And you can't like the Department of Defense is a massive budget. So if you're going to pick one of the budget areas, it's going to be things like Medicaid, Medicare, but also the Department of Defense. So I think that they're probably doing that. I wonder if they wouldn't have done that had they not realized that, how much this was going to cost. And I think they're probably taking a shot at the DoD because actually that then fits in with then pulling back from, because part of that chapter in that document is also about picking the right places around the world and concentrating here and there, and pulling back from Europe would be in line with that. So I think you can put all of those things together and make a case from their point of view to pull out funding from the DoD.
Definitely. Let's get back to Georgie. How, from a political and strategic perspective, how has global support for Ukraine evolved, and what are key geopolitical shifts shaping
Yeah, guys,
it?
I'm gonna go away basically. Yeah, and
Okay.
yeah, I stayed longer than I actually promised, Andrew, mind you.
You did. I appreciate it
Yes.
too.
Yeah, so anyhow, yeah, I'm very happy to see you all, and some people I didn't speak with before, just hanging on, I guess. Continuing my volunteer work and continuing to support the guys, and getting stuff done, because not that I personally can do anything about the United States, Trump, and Musk or anything. It has been done already, like, by the United States people, unfortunately. So all I can do now is just try to handle it as best as I can and continue on. And I appreciate everyone who still continues to support us and doesn't. So many people burying us alive so many times now. Trump will come to power, Ukraine is done, they're all dead now in the coffins, basically. So I really do appreciate everyone who still sticks by and doesn't bury us prematurely. Okay, we have Russia that is trying to bury us prematurely. We don't need our allies and our friends to do that. So yeah, in that sense, happy to be here. Thank you, everyone, and have a good one.
How can everybody follow you? How can everybody follow you?
Ukrainian Anna on Twitter, basically, and Blue Sky. That's two places. Although I don't post as much on Blue Sky, I don't know why. It's just not as spicy there, and I just
I've tried.
can't find. Yeah, I just can't find myself I just agreeing with everyone. It doesn't juice me up. Okay, so in that sense, you can follow me on Blue Sky on Twitter. I'm gonna be doing a pretty big fundraiser in a couple of days. So if anyone wants to join in on that,
What unit?
big secret that I will
Okay.
announce a little later.
You have to go
Yeah.
follow her to find out, chat.
Yeah, they're
Yeah, do
secretive.
that.
I don't know if I can say. I need to ask them. Yeah. So anyhow, point is that most of my guys are in Kupiansk direction in Kharkiv, but a lot of them are also in Sudra in Russia. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. But anyhow, point is that bye bye, love you all. Hopefully,
Hugs, Anna.
yeah, talk with you all again.
Thank you,
Yay.
Anna.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much for your time.
Anastasia.
Yeah, bye, Anna.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm going to have to shoot off as well, guys, but big love to you all, and thank you so much for putting this together, Andrew. You need to come on my channel at some point as well, and we'll have a chat. And that goes obviously for all of you, actually. I've had most of you on there, not Dylan. So Dylan, you're very welcome to pop on and have a chat if you want.
last time I joined you, I made your ears bleed, so I would reconsider that.
You last time you were on, you were walking down the street,
Yes,
weren't you?
yes.
In Copenhagen.
The sound quality of worse than speaking from the depths of the toilet. It's like devil's
pretty good.
asshole.
I love it. No, I don't love the devil's asshole. No, what am I talking about? Thank you everyone for all of your amazingness. Keep fighting the good fight in the information spaces. Thank you for this opportunity, Andrew, and come and hang out with the team at ATP Geopolitics. We're all quite nice. Most of us are quite nice. The odd troll needs a punch in the nose, but that's what you get for what we do. Yeah, take it easy, guys. Big love.
All right, Jonathan, take care.
Bye, Jonathan.
All right, are we still?
I'm next.
Rick, you're going too.
Yeah,
Cool.
to go. So thank you, Andrew, for inviting me. It was
Everybody's
great.
missing Georgie's geopolitical take he's about to give.
Yeah, Well, Georgie, by the way, to be honest, agree with all that you said in the last statement, the one about Ukraine is really doing great. So, and that Syrskyi is, Syrskyi has strategic goals, not some tactical. And yeah, there were major fuck ups in command and stuff.
It's just
is
me and you. We
getting-
always disagree on Syrskyi. Like I'm kind of
yeah,
like, you
but
know.
I'm kind of making peace with that, and I'm just learning. I'm growing up too, just learning how things work, and also I know that what I know that things are getting better. Really, like changes in the army are there, and there's a political will to do that. So yeah, it is becoming better for Ukraine in 2025 than it was in 2024. So this year should be great. So I also wanted to mention what I don't know. I was happy to talk to everyone, guys. I need to go to the channels of other YouTubers more often. I'm still alive, guys. I'm still raising funds as always. I'm just mostly engaging with Ukrainians on my channel. I invite Ukrainian veterans, Ukrainian soldiers to streams. So if you're interested in hearing their stories, they are very important for me personally. And I think for the world, it's important to hear their stories. Go there and check that out. By the way, Viper was on my stream yesterday, Starsky. I also talked to him. Great guy. Okay, thank you. Once again, guys,
Hi, Rick.
live on and prosper. My YouTube channel is Rick the Ukrainian, and also Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram. I now have an assistant who is doing those social networks. I finally have, I don't have time for it, but I have a person for it. Who has time for it? Awesome. See you guys. Live long, prosper,
Rick.
and donate. Yeah. Bye.
Take care, buddy. Peace. All right, the three of you that are left here now, I only have like two more questions for you. So hopefully you guys can stick around. Dylan, we got Dylan, Georgie, and Starsky holding on to the end. Georgie, let's get your geopolitical take now. It's like,
I'll try
hey,
to be short. I
Georgie's
think people-
geopolitics. Bye.
I think
Bye.
people already like there's like, oh my god, not that fucking guy again. So they're just like, let's time to bail.
Yeah,
So yeah, I mean, like first and foremost, I need to say thanks and shout out to Ben Johnson for support. So I see people that support the fundraisers. So thank you so much for support the fundraisers, guys. The Ukrainians are really grateful for that, and I'm grateful for that as well. Which part of geopolitics? We talked a lot about the Americans, and I'm not going to touch on this. I think, I mean, like my perspective on this is like I kind of checked out on what US is doing, right? I checked out on the fact that if we get help from Trump and Trump's America, it's great. It's good. If we don't, well, we don't. I think Ukrainians already understood that, and slowly, very slowly, but also Europeans are getting there. A lot of people looked at what's happening in Europe and got a bit of optimism, and we too got a bit of optimism. And recent German elections are there, but we still have a lot of people that are looking at USA basically as the big daddy. And that is the unfortunate part that we still haven't overcome. Like the big one, which I know a lot of people that are following the war in Ukraine, they're like, well, Poland is definitely going to be for EU. Well, actually, no. Poland is actually a big, big roadblock in more independent Europe. Poland, despite their being like a big supporter of Ukraine, they are actually a big proponent of the transatlantism, like specifically following what the US says. And they have been, I'm not sure what's now because Andrzej Duda, the president of Poland, went to see Donald Trump, and they were scheduled to have a 1-hour meeting, and it lasted for about 10 minutes. I mean, like, let's just say, like, this is brings back painful memories about some of my earlier dates in my life and how it went down. But still, the thing that stands in a way is that we still have this ghost of no. We always need to look back at the United States, and I don't feel that it's completely gone. We definitely see, but there is still an feeling inside of Europe that Europe is preparing for the next war, not this one. A lot of the conversations that are being started as like, well, once Ukraine reaches peace agreement, then we're going to send the peacekeepers, and then we're going to invest into our defenses. It's like they're still not taking the full responsibility and full understanding, which is obviously for me and probably everyone that is watching this stream so long. It's absolutely clear that like you need to act now, but for a lot of European leaders, it is still not there yet. And also for people, like look at Germany, like 9% of Germans that voted for Die Linke. And Die Linke, I mean, I said they're pro-Russian, people's like, no, they're not pro-Russian, like the pro-Russian part split from there. Like the guys say that question like, well, Russia is attacking, but maybe they're not attacking. Maybe they just want to stop fighting. If everyone just stopped shooting, we would have peace.
Oh, boy.
So they're like, peaceniks with a brain rot, and then there's like 9% of Germany are voting for them, and people are coming to my chats and are defending this. Is like, people, which world, which planet are you living in? It's like, just stop shooting. So what I'm stating is like, there are encouraging signs. There are encouraging things that are happening, and Ukraine definitely should be expecting more support from the Europeans. What I don't want is I don't want us Europeans to get complacent that we understood everything, that we already figured out, and that our leaders now can go on and they will make sure that they support Ukraine. But we're getting there. So, but we need to continue on fighting, specifically in Europe, especially in like, I don't know, Berlin. Like, Die Linke winning Berlin. Are you fucking nuts? So, that's my geopolitical analysis.
I don't know why they left. That was a good one. Chat was saying that you actually took it easy right there. You usually get a little hotter on that one.
It's not my channel. I cannot be like
you can...
because you see, like I'm insulting my audience, and like every time I'm getting rant, like about a third of the people is like, oh my god, this guy, you don't know what you're talking, unsubscribe. And because this is your channel, I'm kind of like, you know, it's like we're barely now like, you know, kind of making up, so we're kind of like closing in.
You just gotta,
like
you just start off at a sprint. It's a sprint.
You know, it's like I'm kind of doing a little bit of petting for your channel now, so let's take it slow.
Very true. Now, well, since there's only 3 of you left, well, just a couple more questions, and I'll just ask this to all 3 of you. We'll go Starsky, Dylan, and then Georgie. Let's talk about information warfare. We kind of already did a little bit, but let's get into it heavily. Misinformation has played a significant role in the conflict, shaping global narratives. How do we counter it? Start with Starsky.
There are several ways. As we can see, the American way didn't work. And American way was basically giving the platform to speak to anybody, right? So even though there were attempts to shut down a bunch of bot farms and restrict the pro-Russian media and things like that, didn't really work. As we can see, again, Team Pool is a brilliant example of how it ended. Europe, on the other hand, is fighting this. Recently, they sanctioned a bunch of Russian channels spreading Russian disinformation, literally like yesterday or a couple of days ago. And one of the ways is, of course, destroying the Russian channels of delivering disinformation. We are not talking about Russian channels of delivering information. We're not talking about the platforms of delivering Russian position, because there is no Russian position, because there are no Russian free media in Russia. They just don't exist. All the Russian media are state-controlled, and they deliberately deliver the disinformation to basically reach their military goals. So, again, if there is no independent media in Russia, then what's the point of even listening to Russians at all? Another thing is we should be more, like, it will sound naive coming from me, right? But we should be more positive. And the reason for that is Russia does not produce positive content. Russia does not produce motivational content. And the best way to keep our target audience, and I'm talking about us, my dear friends, in good and combat-worthy shape, is to be more positive, more positive towards each other, towards people we don't know. This is something that works as a good immunity against Russian propaganda. Russian disinformation is aimed at people that are that would prefer to be demotivated, that would like to read bad, negative news, negative content, rather than something positive. At the same time, motivation always works. I can tell from my experience that it's a good thing. So another thing is we have to be more active, of course, because a lot depends on us. Unfortunately, you know, when you see Tucker Carlson's videos, it's very, very hard to reach the same KPI when you see like millions of views on Tucker Carlson's channel versus 10, 20, 50,000 views on channels, people like us. But at the same time, we can still try and do whatever we can. We gotta be more professional ourselves. Coming from a guy sitting literally like, you know, wearing a wife beater on a
I'm wearing sweatpants.
on a serious stream.
I have sweatpants on, so
Yeah.
don't even feel bad.
I have shorts. But I'm
Nice.
wearing something, right? But generally speaking, we have to be more professional ourselves, and one of the ways to achieve this is to have strategy, is to be more self criticizing, and to be more responsible. That's one of the ways. Another good way, if we're talking about disrupting Russian disinformation, is of course exposing how it works. There are bot farms recently, even on the Blue Sky. A new Russian bot farm emerged, Matryoshka. You can read more about it in the on the Bellingcat. They made a good investigation. I'm forgetting English words. And I don't know much German words. That's a big shame, unfortunately. But they keep doing what they did. They keep implementing new bot farms targeted at different sectors, different new platforms. Blue Sky was more or less reliable over the past months, but now we can see that they expand their influence there as well, and we will see them growing their bot farms and growing their potential. Unfortunately, even more because now current administration ruling in the United States doesn't give a slightest damn at all about the disinformation in the social media, disinformation that specifically aims at sowing discord in the American society. They just don't care. If I cannot say that they support Russian disinformation, but they don't care at all about stopping it somehow or protecting American citizens against it at all. That's fact. That's just something that doesn't need any proof. So we will see that a lot, and unfortunately, there is no way to fight it proportionally because Russia spends enormous money. Russia spends billions of dollars every year investing into this informational weapon, which we cannot do ourselves. For several reasons. We don't have infinite money to hire people who would create content and fact check and do all the things that need to be done today. And the other thing, of course, is that unlike Russians, we're not supposed to use disinformation. We're not supposed to use their dirty tools against the people that we respect, because we respect our viewers, we respect our target audience, right? So that is my opinion. Generally speaking, guys, if everything that I just said sounds extremely complicated to you, my friends, you gotta remember one thing: stay positive. Always look at the bright side of life. I literally feel myself like I don't know. We had this TV host in Ukraine. He, by the way, looks like me. He's like bald. His name is Dmitry Gordon, the dude who was selling like you shouldn't say pyramids, you know, like he was like selling shit to people for money, and he was always like smiling. Whatever happens, he was like, oh my god. I'm so happy to see you today in my studio, you know. So I feel a bit like him. But generally speaking, that is the easiest and the most fundamental thing that you can do, because Russian disinformation that is aimed at demotivating people, destroying their morale, it doesn't stick much to people that are open, that are friendly, positive, and that are courageous. So that is my biggest advice to everybody: stay positive and stay strong and decent.
Yeah, resiliency is very important. I'm a U.S. Army veteran, but we had classes on that specifically to teach us how to hunt the good stuff, it would be called, just to stay positive. All right, Dylan.
Just a quick ask question to Starsky.
Yeah.
Starsky, are you watching El Gato?
Sorry?
Are you watching El Gato?
El Gato?
Yeah, no, okay. Never mind.
Cat.
Because he just recently, like, there's a YouTuber named El Gato, and he's Ukrainian. He made recently specifically a video about Gordon.
Oh my God! No, I think it's because he's mentioned a lot. Because Gordon, if you will, I will steal like 5 minutes of time to explain about this beautiful person, because it's like one of the Ukrainian legends. Gordon became famous in Ukraine because he was selling those pyramids, you should say. I still remember this absolutely amazing like advertisement on a video where Gordon, this charming bald-headed man, says, my good friend was dying and nothing could save him. And when I heard about the Yushin-Se pyramids, I decided to grab it like a saving straw. And oh my God, my friend survived. And he's like literally selling those pyramids that you can put water inside and charge it with the cosmic energy, you know, and it will help you grow. It will remove cellulite from your ass. It will grow several
Had
additional
a problem with
centimeters
that
on your
recently.
top.
That's good.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I use it all the time, you know. So he's known in Ukraine because he makes statements that sound like kind of cool, you know, but they are absolutely ridiculous. And recently he mentioned that he has some information. It was right before Donald Trump entered the White House. Like, he has some information that on 28th of January, or like 30th of January, Russia will freaking collapse and Ukraine wins and everything will be fine. And yeah, Ukrainian Alex Jones, yeah, that is something like that. So this dude, by the way, was the one who took interview with Igor Girkin-Strelkov. Yeah, that's the one on the screen. Oh my God, Andrew, if you could share it, that would
Is
be
it
perfect.
in the chat? Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, in the chat. So
Yep.
that is just a couple words about this dude, but generally he was very positive. Like, he had a studio, he would make interviews with different people, with stars, with politicians. Yeah, that's him. He's extremely dangerous guy for himself on the first place, because when you when you punch somebody with like your pinky and ring knuckles, it will hurt. but he was like always smiling, and that is something that I honestly took from him. It's like when you see like a guest in your room and you're like, oh my god, you look so charming, you know, today. I freaking shit, it works. Several years ago, I literally saw a giant Yushensei pyramid on his balcony. And he was like charging water or something like that.
Oh, wow.
So this dude is, he's extremely enlightened. I hope that he survives until the end of the war, so I could literally like bring people and show him to the people like in the zoo. It's worth it. I can make money and become extremely rich.
Like your post-war Hostomel tour is just going to be showing this guy off to the foreigners. They all take pictures.
Yeah, I think I can also show this, that my little friend that I acquired in
Don't
Hostomel
show
after
us
the
your
battle.
little friend, Starsky, please, not.
It's not little friend, because when
special
you
friend.
drink the water charged from the pyramid of Yushensei, it makes your friend more influent than you can think.
Thank you for sharing the insight in the story, Operator Starsky, and the prompt from Georgie. Dylan, misinformation. Misinformation's played a significant role shaping global narratives.
Mhm.
How do we counter it?
How do we counter it? I mean, I knew it was bad for a bit. It's not been hard to tell. When I knew it was particularly bad was when I was watching the number one cable news show in the United States, Tucker Carlson Tonight. It was, when he was on Fox, it was the number one name in all of American cable news. A lot of people don't know that. Reading the Jack Textera leaks, for those of you who forgot about the beauty that was the Jack Textera leaks, that's when an American National Guardsman decided to leak classified information on the Ukrainians and on a bunch of other stuff onto a Discord channel called the Thug Shaker Discord channel, so he could impress his gaming friends. It was very stupid, and it really hurt American credibility to some extent with our Ukrainian allies. It was very embarrassing. But one of the things that came from that is a bunch of leaked information and statistics. And one of the statistics that came out was like, for every one Ukrainian soldier dies, like 3 or 4 Russian soldiers die. It was something roughly like to that frame. Now this is 2022, 2023, right? It was something along those that frame of reference at that time period. Now Tucker Carlson somehow, some way, gets an altered version of this, publishes it on the main news channel seen by the the number one show in news. He goes to the number one show in American news, shows the fake numbers, and says, for every 1 Russian soldier that dies, 5 Ukrainian soldiers die, is the new report he brings to the people. And not only does he show this incorrect, very clearly altered, like you can see the numbers like somewhat cut in half, where the people had like cut out this letter and like moved it here, and cut out this number and moved it here. It looked like a child had made a kidnap letter, like, I know where you live, like you cut out from the different magazine parts to put it together. It looked like that, and he had republished it, and then next week he said it again. No correction issued by Fox, no correction issued by him. That's when I knew it was bad. When it could end up on a message board at the start of the day and end up on mainstream channel by the end of the day. Now, Tucker has since been ousted from Fox News and is now interviewing people he says smoked crack and had gay sex with Barack Obama, so he's a real reputable journalist at this point. But this is still obviously a problem. And I do just want to say, before I get into any idea about solving this, we do need to take some appreciation in how much lies and dishonesty is inherent to the argument against Ukraine. What I said earlier today about like the people who say, I don't care about Ukraine, I just want to sit on a home and grill, that is the most honest argument somebody can make to me from opposing Ukraine in my position. Because I understand it, I know those types of people, I get it. But the type of arguments we get in our day-to-day, or the type of stuff we get in our comment sections, that's not the type of stuff we get. We get bioweapons lab that was gonna, target Russian DNA. We get claims about money laundering by people who don't know what money laundering even is. We get accusations of yachts being bought with American taxpayer dollars, and weapons being shipped to the cartels by people who entered the Trump administration. So these are the types of stuff that get thrown out on the most popular alt media platforms that are opposing the war. These are the types of stuff that I'm interacting with when I'm going back to the States. I knew it was bad when I talked to my friends, my father's friend, and we were just like shooting the shit, drinking a beer or whatever. And he starts asking me about the bioweapons lab and if they were designing those weapons to target Russian DNA because of the stuff he had read on Facebook that had somehow made its way back over to him. So obviously, this is pretty bad. Now, I think that the best thing you can, now obviously I can't have a fix-all solution, but the first thing is, and I agree with Starsky's positive message. Okay, kumbaya, you know, peace on earth, hallelujah, amen. But okay, I'm going to be a little less positive. You need to tear down these bastards. There needs to be a crisis of credibility. After Watergate, there was a huge anxiety amongst the American public because they had felt so betrayed by the office of the White House, by the office of the presidency, that they couldn't stomach somebody in another suit. And so they ended up hiring, getting a man in a sweater to run the country. And his name was Jimmy Carter, the peanut farmer, the man of credibility, right? I want that crisis of credibility when it comes to our media. I want people to look at the type of people who have been lying to them, who've been shoveling shit in their mouths for the last decade or more, and say, I cannot trust you, I cannot stand you, I despise you, I am sorry that God wasted his time on you and putting the effort in you waste his effort. I'm going to now go spend my time with people who are being arbiters of truth because they're documenting the first drafts of history. They're going out there and getting original interviews with those who witnessed battles. They're going out there and talking to medical staff who got the victims out from rubble and saying, look, these injuries are 100% in line with this type of ballistic missile. This type of air defense missile couldn't have produced this. It's not as destructive. What you're saying about the Ukrainians is that that's wrong. You need to build these people up and tear down the liars to the point that they cannot be taken seriously in any extent. They need to be viewed the same way that George Santos is viewed, and their names, like Tucker Carlson, needs to be synonymous with lying in the way that Charles Ponzi is synonymous with scheming and stealing and being a con man. Outside of that, I do want to say, though, when tearing them down, it shouldn't be the American president going on these podcasts tearing them down. It needs to be people who are more like a Jon Stewart type figure. It needs to be the type of people who can entertain those while not bringing them up. Because if the president goes on a podcast, well, not this president, but if a different president goes on a podcast to debate them on the issues and show, hey, look how, or some really credible person, you could build up their reputation. So get comedians, get people of culture, get cultural icons, rappers, or people who would who are good at entertaining but are knowledgeable about the topics to go down there, reduce their credibility to rubble, and then try to replace them with people who are willing to do the humble job of reporting. And that's the last part. This is the last little key to my my solution or my plan, is that there needs to be a humbling at the top and the bottom of the media consumption chain. At the bottom, when I talk about the plebs, all of you people watching, okay, all of the mouth breathers who tune into my stream every day. For you people, you need to humble yourselves to the degree of, wow, this agrees with me. I should be less trusting of it because it agrees with me. When I read something in my social media feed and it tells me like, oh, this so-and-so did X, Y, and Z without me confirming it, and I believe it because I want to believe it, that you need to get out of those cycles. You need to get out of that cycle because it's easy for me to read and be like, oh, Russians committed this war crime? Of course they did. I've seen them commit a ton of war crimes in person. Of course they committed that war crime, duh. But it's still my due diligence as a journalist to go out there, do the research, and not to fall into these cycles that allow yourself to get kind of caught in a bubble. And I've seen so many people get caught in a bubble. And it's not only true with parties, it's true with all sorts of politics and like social life. You can get caught in bubbles. So pop the bubbles. Yeah.
I have a question for Dylan. Bro, question sounds like this. in my opinion, in order to reach this, in order to reach the crisis of credibility, we need a strategy, because what we see on a television, when we see Team Carlson and yada yada, the problem is there is a strategy behind them. There is a social design agency. There is this Struktura agency. There is a bunch of Russian agencies, also not only commercial, but also states agencies that create strategies that are approved by the office of the Russian dictator, and then they work with influencers like Tucker Carlson, like Tim Pool, etc., etc. There are approximately 2,500 pro-Russian influencers operating in the United States at this very point, directly with Russians. Some of them don't know that they do it, but it's a fact. So there is a strategy behind them, and there is finances behind them. Will it be effective if we turn, let's say, canceling the liars into a culture or a subculture? Or do you think that we also need a strategy and this must be systemized?
I do think that there's some value in, I guess you can call it guru busting. Guru as the idea of like, I just so happen to be an expert in everything all at once. Like if you turn into Tim Pool or Hassan Stream, or you turn into like any number of people who are going to be talking about whatever is just in the cycle of news, I think that there's this inclination to like almost act as you're an expert. You never say you're an expert, but you talk about it as if you're an expert. And the thing is, it's one thing to be like, I never claimed to be an expert, but if you're talking about something constantly and you think people should take you seriously, and then when people don't take you seriously, you get mad, like you're acting like an expert. You want people to treat you like an expert. And if you want to do that credibly, you have to have actual experts in the room, right? And when you talk about Tim Pool, Hassan, Tucker Carlson, any of these big people, they're very wealthy, they have a lot of connections, they could go do it. It's either they're too lazy, and I'm going to be, to some extent, nice to Hassan, and I think that is a contributor. And for others, I think, is because they deliberately know they can't. Because, like I said, when it comes to Ukraine, you can't really talk about the bioweapons labs with an expert and be taken credibly, because they're going to laugh it out of the room. You can't talk about all sorts of different, like Euromaidan coup. You're not going to talk with a Ukrainian, an expert on Ukrainian history, and have them look at them and say, so Victoria Nuland, President Victoria Nuland, what do you mean, President of Ukraine, Victoria Nuland? It's just not going to work. So I do think the guru busting is important. What was the other part of that question?
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask whether we need a strategy, or whether we can turn this into a culture or a subculture.
I do think there should be strategies to it. Like, for example, like I said, I don't want Hakeem Jeffries, and I don't know if you know who that is, but he's the leader of the Democrats in the House, or Chuck Schumer, he's the leader of the Democrats in the Senate with the very droopy glasses on his nose. He always looks like he's about to fall asleep, and he's about to offer you like a grandma's candy, but
A Twix bar or something.
yeah, like you suck on this, right? Anyway, but I think like having those people go into these shows and try to debate them would be the worst possible strategy, because one of the reactions to Harris losing is Harris needed to go on Joe Rogan. Harris needed to do this, and I agree that Harris, the candidate who's running for president, needs to go on the shows that have the biggest audiences that aren't completely predisposed to just hate her right out of the go with no, like there's no reason for her to go on Tucker's show. She's never going to win anybody over Tucker. Joe Rogan, you never know. But when you put like Hakeem Jeffries and these other people on there, you're going to build up their credibility. They're going to tear them down. They're not maybe made best for these settings. And what looks better than like alt media person with no degree, like a citizen of the Republic, tearing down one of the bureaucrats? It's just made like propaganda for them. You want to have people in there who are slick, media savvy, funny, entertaining. That's why I'm like, Jon Stewart should be the people going on Joe Rogan saying like, this Trump guy, what do you mean? He doesn't care about the Constitution. It should be people like him, because it's very hard to really like scowl your brow if he's making you laugh the whole time, and you're going to be more open to take information in. That's why I'm very open to I know Kyle Kalinske and other American commentators have been talking about draft Jon Stewart for president, and I don't know if he's the best policy wonk for the job, but I do think there is an appeal to somebody like him. You know, he's not like our own Trump, but he's an entertainer in that way. I did want to finish my point from before, though. The humbling of the bottom is the public need to realize, like, you got to pop your bubbles. You need to leave your bubbles. You can't just consume stuff and be like, this would be nice if it was true, so it's true. Which is how people treat social media right now, and that's bad. I do think at the top there needs to be humbling as well, which is that mainstream media outlets, politicians, the elites of society, whatever you may call them, they need to be able to go into the rooms where the stinky public are. Like I said with Joe Rogan, that's also true with any other number of publications. Joe Rogan was just one example. I think the better, you need to go wherever the public is, and you should never be above going to where the public is. And I'm not saying that you need to go on Nick Fuentes' podcast. That's not where the public that you're going to win is, but you need to go where the public is. Last thing I wanted to say on this is like, honestly, right now, when I see what's going on domestically in the United States, with Article 1 and the power of the purse and the constitutional crisis that many, including me, that I think is going on, as well as a lack of dedication to any values when it comes to our foreign policy. And if there's anything that you could say that is, even Trump would admit, is this is not a values-based foreign policy. This is not a foreign policy based on, I care about democracy in Ukraine. This is a foreign policy based on, what can I bleed the stone for? What resources can I get from this wounded antelope trying to defend itself? And I hate to use it, but you get the idea that you're trying to get as much out of this person that you're supposed to be there for. This person you're supposed to be there for is trying to drain it. It's completely just what he can get for it on his own side. And so I don't think that's just true about his foreign policy worldview. I think that's true about his democratic domestic worldview. And so without some ideological underpinning that connects leadership and the movement to support Ukraine in the United States with Ukraine, i.e. we support democratic republicanism, we support a people's right to rule themselves, without these value underpinning, it's always going to be one sellout away from Ukraine having its neck in a noose. All it's going to take is Russia making a better offer than the Ukrainians, a country that has 4 times the size and population, a country that has much vaster resources, a country that is much bigger, a country with much more military might, a country that there has been some talk by people, at least in some parts of Trump's circle, of trying to create a divide between China and Russia, be more useful. Point is, without an ideological underpinning, while there are strategic security reasons for the United States to continue to support Ukraine, without an ideological underpinning, all somebody has to do in Trump's immediate circle is convince him that the Russians can give you a few extra dimes. And that's something that concerns me a lot, which is why I do think that democratic republicanism, these values are still important to undermine as to why people are supporting Ukraine. I know the values can, I don't know how to put it in like the least PC way, but like you talk to some people that, oh, what, democracy, freedom, that's a bunch of gay, stupid, liberal nonsense, what, you're just saying using this propaganda terms, but these things actually do matter. Because when people come in the room that don't care about these things, you notice. And we've seen it through the UN resolutions, we're seeing it through the way the Trump admin talks about the country, and we're seeing about it how they're approaching elections. They're not approaching elections from the perspective of, oh, let's make sure that democracy in Ukraine functions the best way possible and it's best for its representation of the people. It's, oh, we need to do this because the Russians want it. And it's just showing that, again, I think this being fierce, dedicated Republicans, as in republicanism, is still important, I think, for the cause. And it shows that without that ideological underpinning, they're very quick to throwing you overboard.
Thank you so much, Dylan. Georgie.
Can I quickly respond to this?
Hey, you're up.
So you talked a lot here. It's like, and I have patiently and silently with, and I disagree with about 90% of what you said. Like, it's absolute garbage. I think you're utterly cucked. I'm sorry, but I need to say this because I'm a guy that has like zero self-respect. Like, so, and because I have zero self-respect, when they go low, I will go lower. So, and the only thing that I'm hearing is like, no, we need to stay on top. We need to stay responsible. We need to, and I wrote down some of this, like Starkey said, we need to be responsible. Fuck being responsible. No one is acting responsible. Are any of the lies are being acting responsible? No one gives a shit about responsibility. Dylan popping their bubble. Everyone needs to just get out of their bubble and act critically. Fuck that shit. No one is acting critically. No one is thinking. The fact that we're sitting here and talking about supporting Ukraine is because people like this bubble. It's comfy. It's nice. No one wants to come here except for the propaganda purposes to poke and say, haha, Ukraine already lost. No one is joining conversations just to see how they can change their opinion, to approach it critically. Everyone is just want to stay in their bubble. And I think it's a noble causes. I think it would be a much better world in where people could say that if we act nobly, if we promote like some kind of knightly, fair Republican values, where we can just state the things that are true. If that would work, then I think there would not be an issue there. So, in my perspective, the only thing that we can fight them is what NAFO did, is just using the propaganda things. Because what NAFO 69, not 69, but NAFO movement did is they fought very effectively Russian propaganda on Twitter when the war began by just spamming dog shit memes all across the X platform, or sorry, Twitter platform. I just cannot call Twitter because Twitter was something good-ish. And whatever that is not Twitter. And that worked. Like, for a while, Russian propaganda didn't know what to do. Russian propaganda was stuck because they never got the resistance to something that they were doing. And like, if you remember the first like 3-5 months, there was like almost like they couldn't achieve anything. The problem is that they adapted and we didn't. Now they adapted with the new propaganda techniques. And everything that we responded with is just like, well, let's not go that low. Like, you know, shitty cartoon dogs, that was like a step too far. So you're saying is like Starsky complaining, oh, they have bot farms. Where the fuck is our bot farms? Where is our bot farms? I want them to talk about the things that we want them to talk about. I want Donald Trump to talk not about how shitty Ukraine is, but trying to explain that his hands are not small. Like, that story about small hands, fucking excellent. He was talking about that shit forever, taking all of the time. Why was it just one story? Why was it not 100 stories? Like, I don't want them to talk about whether or not, like, vaccines work or not. I want to talk about whether or not the right-wing politicians causes brain cancer. Like, that is the thing that I'm talking about. Like, we are sort of in information warfare, and you're just saying it's like, well, they're fighting dirty, so dirty bastards, like achieving all of these results by fighting dirty, like winning elections, like putting us back, like, but if we put Jeffries and like guys, and then we kind of put more responsibility and ask people to have more responsibility, then for sure we're gonna win. And I think it's a load of crap.
Ellen?
I mean, I just think he listened to someone else. I don't know if he's half paying attention to what I was saying or what. But number one, I said Hakeem Jeffries people don't need to go on there. That it'd be bad for them to be put under pressure. That they need to pick better actors. So that's not me like, let's make sure our congressmen go on the podcast so we can hold them accountable. I'm saying, run away. Run away, Hakeem. You're not good at this. Run away, Chuck Schumer. Your glasses are gonna fall off in mid-question. It's not good. Get away. It should be other people going on there doing that who are better actors. Look, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be disinformation and stuff that the United States engages with, right? But let's be clear. But when we engage in this, let's be clear. Like let's give an example of this type of disinformation in this age, though. America spread disinformation in Asia about like during the COVID pandemic in order to make Filipinos and other Asians not trust the Chinese alternative to the COVID vaccine, in order to trust this and cause distrust in Asia, which then led to Muslims, because they're trying to tell Muslims that there was pork in the vaccine, not wanting to get the vaccine for religious purposes, which lead to people dying, right? Now, I'm all for doing like going out there and put like Radio Free Asia or whatever, going out there pushing the message. But we also need to realize that if we act like Russians, we can become Russians. So let's not be Russians, right?
Yeah, but did it work?
It didn't work. We just probably got a bunch of Asians killed. What did it do?
So things happened.
Yeah.
So there was an effect. So there was an effect. Like, I'm not saying that the message that was delivered there, it's not great. I'm just saying that we need to start using more efficient terms, efficient things. That so far it was extremely inefficient, and so far the only thing that people are coming up is like, well, we need some kind of model and so on. We don't need model. They already have a model. Just use theirs. They are laughing at us. Like, I have this video by.
So we should try to out-Russian the Russians. The Russians will win.
Absolutely.
The Russians will win. The Russians will win every time you out-Russian the Russian.
No,
don't try to out-pick a pig. What, are you fucking kidding me? Yeah, get in the mud down there, see if you win. Okay, yeah, go out there with Trump, call him a moron and gay, and see if you win the insult game with Trump.
It's not. That's stupid.
It's not.
Tell him his small hands. Tell him his small spells. Tell him he's buying shoes with the platform. Like, no one is saying.
You adapt and you learn from your opponent, but we shouldn't just become the. For my point about values earlier wasn't to say that if we all just believe in democracy and George
You're
Washington
saying we just need to take it on the chin and be more noble.
That's not what I said.
Let him finish, George. Let him finish, George. Then you can come in.
If you, the difference between someone who believes in democracy and doesn't believe, Starsky, you leaving? I'm sorry, man.
No, he just has a point. He has a point. You're good.
Okay.
Keep going.
One last point before Starsky. My main point was the difference between someone who believes in republicanism and democracy and not is evident between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Joe Biden was weak on Ukraine. He was not my favorite person on Ukraine, right? He's better than Obama, but that's because he's better than the floor of the basement, right? But the difference between him and Donald Trump is I believe Joe Biden believes in constitutional democracy, while Donald Trump said he wanted to terminate the Constitution because he couldn't suck it up when he lost an election. And that difference, that ideological difference, affects how they govern and affects how they engage with the world geopolitically. I'm not a Mearsheimer realist. I believe that, values do matter and how people dictate their societies and govern them. And so that difference has led to Donald Trump being more willing to backstab the Ukrainians than Joe Biden. All I'm saying is ideology does matter, and Mearsheimer's wrong.
And then Georgie, we'll come back to you.
Thank you. I just wanted to add briefly a couple of things. Why Russian propaganda works, why Russian disinformation and all the dirty technique works on their target audience. Because of their objectives. What are their objectives? Their objectives are to sow discord. And basically what we see now, it works, right? There is discord between United States, between European countries, and within the European countries. And within those, each country, there is discord between different social groups. That is how their propaganda works. Do we want to use the same techniques to achieve the same objectives? Like, what was the purpose of sowing discord between European countries?
Not European countries. I want discord between Russia supporters. I want them to argue about the narratives that we promote. That is what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's like we need to target the same audience. No, I want to target them. Not us, them.
Look, if you want to target them, you got to target Russians. But if you want to target Russians...
because they're eating up Russian propaganda.
Of course. But if you want to target Russians, you need to find some fucking access to their informational space, which Ukrainians are fighting over for years, and United States are fighting even longer than Ukrainians.
They're fighting in the same space. Like, look at what NATO did.
Yes, but why NATO were effective is because they basically ridiculed Russians about possible. And that was, of course, effective, but it was not about reaching the same objectives as Russians have using their same techniques. It was a different thing.
How many of them complained about funny cartoon dogs coming and complaining and banning? Like, I cannot write on Twitter. Like, I cannot write anything. These fucking cartoon dogs. They're not writing content. They're complaining about cartoon dogs.
Also, to Georgie's point, really quick too, they have an investigation. They're trying to investigate it.
Those people complaining were people talking to English speakers. You go to like Russian-speaking social media over in Russia, there's not like tons of Shiba Inus going crazy over there. That is if they're trying to go into our spaces. So if we wanted to bring it to the Russians, we'd have to go to their social media platforms and start saying like, guys, did you know Putin's wife's actually a man? Dude, like that's the type of stuff we'd have to like start doing.
Yeah, I
Yes.
completely agree on that.
Georgie's like, yes,
I
let's do
completely
that.
agree on that. And we need to find access to target Russians. The target audience that supports Russians and lives in our space, we don't need to sow discord among them. We need to win their basically win their support.
Georgie, you
Why
disagree?
it's important? Why it's important? I know that Georgia will disagree, but why it's important is because Russian target audience targets mainly the general public that makes it like the middle, not like the biggest supporters of Ukraine and not like the biggest enemies of Ukraine, but everybody in the middle. Those roughly like 60% of people that are there in this social group, and if we target them and sow discord among them, then basically we will fuck up everything. We will have no supporters ourselves. We need to be more professional and more responsible and cooler in order to win their trust, and we need to expose Russian lies to this audience. But speaking of Russian audience, that is inside of the Russian informational bubble. And by the way, I completely agree with Georgie that our informational space only interested for people that are interested. You cannot, I don't know, make mega guys like this channel, for example, right? Because mega guys like other YouTube channels, it's very, very hard to bring somebody here from a different target audience. Russian target audience, Russian bubble works absolutely the same way, but finding access to Russian audience that was, by the way, brainwashed through centuries is kind of hard. It requires a different approach than just informational operations. It requires a different approach than even PsyOps. It requires specific processes inside of Russia itself. One good example is what happened with Prigozhin, for example. That could work there. Everything else, I have my doubts. It's very, very hard to influence Russian informational space because they don't care. The information that you sold them doesn't really work. One example that I can share, for example, that worked in our case when we were stationed on the Svetlodarsk Bulge, and there were a bunch of Russian social media, and we were spreading all kinds of shit there. That a new brigade got deployed on this position, and they brought like dogs for clearing the Russian trenches, specifically trained on the smell of the Russian people and the sound of the Russian language, and they brought like autonomous drones that attack and shit like that. Rays, that stuff worked. But if we're talking about global Russian public that is being brainwashed on a daily basis by all the Russian television, like we don't have those resources. I think countries like United States, if they were ruled by somebody like more conscious, they could implement something. But again, I believe that they tried and they failed. So we need to protect our informational space, our bubble, and bring as many people to our bubble as possible. That is just my opinion.
Yeah, let's go, Georgie, Dylan.
It's I mean, like, we need to protect our informational spirits, bring people. I'm sorry, but that's just like dream scenario. That is just dreaming. Like it's not realistic. Like think about this way. Like what Russia is doing is just a systematic approach to information. It's a tool. They're using specific tool to target. They are sewing in like 17, 18, 25 different stories that are ridiculous, like about Zelensky being in Paris buying Lamborghinis. It doesn't even matter if they're coherent. They're just polluting our space. But that pollution of the space creates the narrative. Like creates, oh, something is wrong with Zelensky. It creates the feeling. People starts going with their guts.
Like in the subconscious.
My idea is that well, it's like if the space is already polluted, like except it's polluted by our enemies, Well, let's add more narratives just so we pollute it even more. And then maybe there's going to be people, because people are, I'm sorry, but like people are dumb, especially when we're in a 21st century age of information overload. We passed the age of where information was scarce. And if you find some better facts, then suddenly you feel educated and you're like, I know more. Now we know way too much. Whenever we start researching topic, we find everything. We find 70, you go under one single video, you'll find 1,000 comments or thousands and thousands of comments with a lot of people with different opinions. And people just get overloaded. What is important is building narratives. And when I'm saying like we need to get these narratives in, that is what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is like, where is our 100,000 stories about Trump having small hands, about him, I don't know, having something else ridiculous, like those bite-sized points that people will just stick in their brain like a nasty little worm of JFK and will just not let it go.
Just like a
Yeah,
like a
and,
healthy
like-
wave of trolling, which you would say, Georgie.
So like what NAFO did was great. Like, that's like, it's polluted the thing. People's like, okay, I cannot take this messages seriously because the only thing that is in his comments is the shit posting from cartoon dogs. People's like, how can I take any serious messaging? The problem is that Russia adapted. They put a lot more effort into high level narratives. They started promoting this like, okay, let's buy in Joe Rogan, Tim Pool, and so on. Let's promote this narrative into the higher level. And NAFO already doesn't reach to that high level because at that moment, people look that are in this bubble is like, oh, like there's a lot of cartoon dogs shit posting, but this guy is an authority to me. So they are like judging by authority. That's why I'm saying is like, okay, where is our counterpoints about the authority as well?
Look, Georgie, Russia. Sorry, I will
You're good.
just
No, you're good, bro.
like,
No, go ahead,
answer
Georgie.
real
Go.
quick.
You're good.
Russia protects its informational space. It's a fact. You cannot fucking access it. There's no way you inject something. There's no independent media, nothing like that. Russia pollutes our informational space, which is basically like if you put yourself on the place of the Russian people, that's exactly what you're talking about. Only vice versa. It's like mirror of what you just said. Yeah. They protect their informational space. They don't care about the truth, right? The facts. They just throw whatever they like into their own informational space. But it's protected against the intrusion. Why don't they care about facts? Well, it's because this is autocratic regime and yada yada. But the main point is Russians are absolutely different from us. They have absolutely different mentality. And the way you said, we are overloaded by the information here in our informational space. And if you start throwing shit at our informational space, people will start asking questions. Are you credible enough? So that is the reason why I say that we should have communication. We cannot use propaganda like Russians directed into our own informational space. But speaking of Russians, of course, we can experiment with whatever. NAFO dogs, they were not, it was not strategy. It was a good tool, right? It was a good tool to shut up Russian propagandists. It worked. But in terms of strategy, we got to think a bit higher than just one tool. We got to invent a lot more. So that's my point.
Dylan?
So, man, there's a few things. I agree definitely with the vibes boost. I guess that's the way I put it. Like the idea that you see one thing that you don't trust about Zelensky, so then you see other things, and so you're like, well, I heard this thing before, so this is probably true too. And then through literally just a cloud of just rumors, you can start just kind of believing it. And I've had so many conversations with people who called in who say these things and say that's not true. And it's like you just told them that Santa Claus isn't real. It's impossible for them to. They thought they had some like trap card, but it's just the same thing you hear all the other like everywhere else. So yeah, I do agree that does have a real effect, and I think that even if it's not to like boost misinformation, but to generally shift the conversation towards, wow, look how crazy the Russians are. Wow, look how barbaric this. Wow, a human safari. Who would hunt babushkas? Can you believe it? Like that's the type of stuff that should be talked about instead of like, is Zelensky dancing in heels? And I think that like the other one grabs at the heartstrings more of people a lot more too. But I mean, this is the job of media. This is the job of those who are supposed to communicate these stories to the public. Now, there's two big problems I'm going to run into with like trying to access the Russian information space. The first problem is that we can't just like copy what the Russians do, namely because Russians aren't Americans. The type of stuff that appeals to Americans and are very loud culture, it's going to be a little different than what's going to appeal to Russians. And I also think that there is, despite how little it feels like sometimes, there is still an inherent value in the truth. And I think that while I'm not saying that we need to like make sure that we add all the proper context in every post and make sure that the 100% nuance. What I'm saying is that attaching things to people's physical reality is a lot, I think, more powerful than attaching it to something they cannot see. For example, telling that my father's friend about some biolabs in Ukraine, he doesn't really feel that passionately about biolaboratory. He just saw it on Facebook, said, oh, that's crazy. I couldn't believe I didn't see this on the CNN, right? And he had that reaction. Now you go over to Russia and say, egg prices are high because Putin sold them all to the North Koreans to pay for his war, right? Or something along that. You're tying it to something that's in their experience that's much more tangible than, say, like some fucking biolab that you don't know anything about, right? And so you would have to make content that would appeal to the lived experiences of Russians that would also, I think, be more authentic to a lot of the plastic attacks that you'll get from the Kremlin, that they, I think, win more through like quantity than over quality of like the attack. Like if you make a bunch of, I call this like silverware versus plasticware in this type of information attack, I guess. I'm calling it that now, I just coined it. But the other thing is, Russians don't really know what's real. Like they don't have, I'm not saying all Russians, of course, but generally in Russian society, they don't have a strong grasp in the information space of, this is where I go to learn what's going on. This is where I go. This is my good, clean source of information from this credible journalist like an XYZ. The closest you can get to that is the Russian war blogger space. And considering that we've all consumed their content before, we all know the type of problems and kind of like quirky personalities that come out from that space. And so this has been done purposefully by the government. They purposely want to make it so like, is this true? Is this true? I don't know. It's not really I can't really know what's true. I'll just believe what I want to believe, or I'll give up. Right? And it creates a certain amount of apathy that is like a turtle shell for anyone else who wants to come in and get rid of that lack of apathy and inspire the Russian people to action or something. So getting the Russians to have some type of grasp on, oh, this is a decent like piece of information, or this is a place where I can get information. I mean, you would have to really swarm a system where the people are that apathetic, or have been designed to be apathetic, in order to overpower it. And you would need something better than the plasticware of the administration. You would need some strong fruit, like, for example, the egg prices or something along those. You would need something that I think holds stronger to their everyday lives.
Well, very, very good back and forth, I think, because I could agree with all points. Georgie made excellent points, because that's the things I rant and rave about. Like, we need to fight back the way they fight, but then Dylan and Starsky make a good balancing choice. So I think all ideas there are good, and you can clearly hear that there's passion there if you're watching. I mean, it's a very, very passionate topic. Misinformation is a huge issue, and people want to fight back, and they want to learn how to do it properly. So one thing we can talk about, all three of us, and let's start with Starsky and go around, is how can audiences better identify reliable sources of information and avoid misinformation? I think Dylan was starting to talk about that a little bit.
Subscribe to Dylan Burns, Operator Starsky, Mercado Media, and Ukraine Matters. You're welcome.
Perfect.
I double that. I literally double that. But generally, again, people will only search for the information in the sources they like. If you are a big fan of Putin, you will not read about Putin in, for example, Wall Street Journal or Bild. You will read about them in Komsomolskaya Pravda. Therefore, stick to your information sources and make sure that this shit doesn't come from some unknown Indian local, newspaper, because this is exactly the way Russian disinformation works. One clear example. Again, I'll be very, very fast because I know we're running out of time. But the clear example is aids were made where? In the United States by the CIA and yada yada to kill gay people. You know, where did this disinformation originate? It originated in some like Indian local newspaper in the 70s, and it took 20 years to develop into something, and everybody forgot about the source of this information. Nowadays, information is spreading like within a day or hours, and you can easily find the source. So when it's the source, like for example, that unknown previously channel that one day published a video with investigation that President Zelensky bought 2 yachts, considering the fact that you cannot use yachts in Ukraine at this point, it's forbidden. And this channel was completely unknown, but for some reason it started like instantly being shared by the Russian media, and everybody now knows that Zelensky buys like Hitler's cars and yachts and castles. So you gotta check the sources. That is important. And again, please subscribe to Ukraine Matters, Dylan Burns, and Mercado Media, because these guys know what they're doing.
Dylan?
You can also hit the notification bell on all of our channels as well to get updates on live, updates on the news. But there's a few things I'll throw out there. The first thing is social media is not news. Twitter's not news. Instagram's not news. None of these things are news. These are feed. This is a feed, an unfiltered feed of information. Now, that doesn't mean it's worthless. That doesn't mean it's like heroin, and if you do it, you're going to end up... No, but if you just consume it completely unfiltered, it's like drinking water without putting it through the Brita filter. You're going to get all this stuff that's not good. You might get some good in there. You probably learn like a factoid or two about like ancient Greek history or something, I don't know. But that'll be combined with Holocaust denial and flat Earth. So it's, I don't know, is that worth it? I don't know if a few fun fact about mandarins is worth thinking the Armenian genocide was faked. I don't think it is. So if you're going to use social media, make sure that you find actors in that space. And if you're on X, I would recommend staying in the following tab instead of like the recommended thing. So it always puts Elon Musk at the top every single time because he needs to make sure his voice is always being heard. But like, make sure that the people that you're consuming from social media are those that are trusted names, that are either original on the ground sources or people with credibility who have a history of producing reports that can be checked by their peers and has been widely, you know, it doesn't even need to be widely reviewed and like widely documented. You can have like small reporters, small creators too, but you just need to have something that can make you say this person is credible. They're an expert. They have experience in the field. They're on the ground there. They're a local source. Because the unfiltered reposting is fucking crazy. There's so many accounts that I'll see like breaking news. So-and-so just died. I can't believe that like Taylor Swift killed Xi Jinping. And then you go and you click on the account and it's like name bunch of numbers and the account description is father patriot. It's like, okay, well that what is this like? How does this have 200,000 likes and 20 million views and there's no source on it? And if you click the original source, it'll be some disinformation outlet or it'll be people who are trying to make money. So they're trying they're outraged, like they're click farms. And that's on to my next point. Just spend a few clicks of your time to double check. Okay, you see something, you believe it, you want it to be true. Wouldn't it be great that if you just went over, clicked the search bar, took your decrepit fingers and clicked the different keys and you put in the sentence and actually looked to see if it was real? You know, back in the day, your great grandma and grandpa actually had to get off their wrinkly ass and go to the library and like go through the encyclopedias and like go through all this stuff to figure out if this stuff was real. And you just got to pull that little thing out of your phone and you're too lazy to do it. Waste of space. But point is, just spend a few clicks of your time. It's not that hard. And then you can know with confidence when you later say, yeah, no, Victoria Nuland did not overthrow the government. You can say that with authority because you went and you researched it. Another thing, trust the people who accept mistakes, okay? Now, obviously, if somebody makes too many mistakes, it can become a pattern. If somebody is like really aggressive at making predictions and keeps getting it wrong. For example, someone said, when Trump wins, peace shall descend upon Ukraine. Like Tim Pool said, like once you get to that point, like, no, it's not that credible. Also, he doesn't accept his mistakes. And that's the thing. When somebody makes a mistake, look how they react. Do they say, when confronted by a chatter, like, ah, damn, you know what? I think you're right. Sorry, misinformation spreading. Shouldn't have done that. Or do they say, shut the fuck up, ban you, or ban it, or like they post something and it spreads disinformation? Do they silently take it down? And you're like, okay, that's not, maybe you should have. Or do they keep it up, don't care, let it keep spreading because it's already got like 10 million views and they want that interaction, they want that, money? Check to see if they accept mistakes. And honestly, this is how I put it. If somebody has made mistakes, 2 to 3 mistakes, but accepted them and moved on, I would trust them more than somebody I've never seen make a mistake. Honestly. Lastly, guru busting. If someone's an expert on everything, they're an expert on nothing. Take that to the grave.
And thank you, Dylan, for that answer. And George, do you have anything further? Or you just subscribe to our channels for truth?
No, well, yes, but you can also support us on the Buy Me a Coffee and Patreon and all of the other sources, especially for Dylan, because if you didn't know, Dylan recently had a bit of a unfortunate accident. I don't know what's the stuff with the house burning down. It's a very, very unfortunate. So, and I just wanted to say, Dylan, like, very, very sorry for that. And I know nothing can bring the memories and everything that you lost, but at least maybe people here can support and at least give you some support. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My words escape me. I would just say that people should not feel embarrassed or bad about being wrong. Thinking critically, finding sources. Like when I was in university, it was a half a year subject in the university. It's insanely actually difficult to find the right sources and categorize them and understand which sources are good, which sources are bad. It's a whole science there. So if you're just wrong, don't bother. Like it's normal to be wrong. We all are wrong and so on. If you not want to be working with information, then just accept it and just accept when you're wrong and be critical if someone says like, no, that's not true. Try doubting it maybe, like, and reconfirm. And second thing, Google. Like Google is like, there's so many questions that I got that people just could have Googled and it would be literally the first question. Like, for example, I did a video on German elections and I talked about the Nazi party in Germany and that they're far right. And people was like, well, they were socialists, so they were not far right. Literally the first Google search, literally the first Google search explains it. So that's kind of the level that we're sometimes operating at. So don't be worried if you're wrong and support the Ukrainian armed forces.
I got one final question before we give our final thoughts and sign out to everybody. As we look ahead, I want to ask, what does victory look like for Ukraine, and what will it take to get there? Let's start with Starsky, Georgie, and Dylan.
Victory for Ukraine is Russia's collapse. I think it's equal. Because until Russia is able to continue its aggression, they will keep doing it. And until Russia, as long as Russia is able to do that, they will do it against Ukraine, against other democratic nations. So they must be at least isolated completely. That is my opinion. Plus, the reason they are able to wage informational warfare, etc., create bot farms, is because they literally invest a lot of millions of their dollars into this. So if they're unable to do that, if they're unable to produce their vehicles and weaponry and build bot farms because their economy is not existing, they will not be able to do that. And we can reach it. And actually, it's much easier to reach than build all those ammunition factories across Europe, than building tanks, inventing new patriots, etc., etc. It just requires some will. So I really think that the key to Russian collapse is our willpower. and the willpower of decision makers.
Thank you, Starsky. Georgie?
Yeah, I think Ukraine getting to the 1991 borders, because everything else kind of will just follow that. Like it's gonna basically that's gonna start the process. That's the only process. Even if you care for Russians for some weird reason, that's the only way for Russian society to start reflecting on where they are, what they're doing, and so on. They need to understand that their current model of imperialism is not paying off, and that's the only way to
Thanks for the 20.
have peace or whatever. That's the only way forward. And for everyone else, if I would say like only words of advice, just don't be afraid of victory. Winning is good. Like it doesn't have to be half solution. It doesn't have to be something half negotiated. Just accept that we can win.
Thank you, Georgie. Dylan?
So, I mean, for me, Ukrainian victory is when Russians and Russia can learn to live as just another country in that part of the world. And that when it looks at Ukraine as just another country in relation to itself, not as an extension of itself, not as a protectorate or a vassal or some like brother or a cousin or even like the mailman. It's the neighbor. And that is, I think, when victory will truly happen. Because there could even be, like, say, Ukraine, let's say tomorrow, Ukraine took back Crimea. Beautiful, fantastic, and then the Russians go home. If they invade again in 10 years, how much was that victory? It was victory maybe in this stage of the war, I mean, but it wasn't victory in the end of the cycle. And what I like about when Zelensky talks about what he wants his administration to be, or his time in office to be, he talks about it as the end of a cycle. He says, what I would like my time in office to be is the end of the endless cycle of Russia's invasions, conquests, and occupations. And if we can end that cycle, then, you know, basically I will feel like that I have, you know, done my job, etc. And I think that, to me, is what Ukrainian victory is. It's not set in any specific city. It's not set in any specific, like, cultural demand with any language. Like, if we just intensify the language law here and make you... I think it is when the Russians, for their own good as well, learn to stop sending their sons over here to take over other people's children, because they view it as their right, or even responsibility, as if almost like a Russian man's burden. Once that happens, then that will be Ukrainian victory. Whether that'll be this year or 12 years from now, I have no idea.
Thank you so much, Dylan. All right, let's do our final thoughts. We'll start with Georgie first. As we wrap up, I'd like each guest to share a final thought. What message do you want viewers to take away from this discussion? We'll go Georgie, Dylan, and then Starsky can wrap us up.
Yeah, I already said, guys, like, support Ukraine. We're not as bad situation as it's painted to be. Is it challenging? Are there problems? Yes. But haven't there always been like issues, and it's always been an uphill battle? This is just another uphill. And if we continue supporting Ukraine, Ukraine, I'm pretty sure, also knows that, then we can get over it.
How can people find you? How can they subscribe to you? How can they support you?
I mean, Ukraine Matters on YouTube, Ukraine Matters on Blue Sky, and just please don't punch me if you see me.
Dylan?
Is that spelled Ukraine like the country?
Yes. Why?
Okay, good. Just making sure. So, what's the big takeaway from this conversation? I'm just fucking with you. The big takeaway from this conversation, I guess for me, would be, we're 3 years into this. We're going on to year 4. It was supposed to be 3 days, right? We have a lot of difficulties to deal with right now, but every stage of the war has had immense difficulties. Whether at the very start, when everything was so chaotic, and it was basically pick up a rifle, pick up a Molotov, and just see if we can delay them enough to get this in order, whether or not the West was just going to do what they did back in 2014. I mean, who would have thought that the Germans would actually send the amount of munitions that they ended up sending, compared to the fact that I didn't even think they were going to agree to the SWIFT sanctions at the start of the war. And whether it dealing with new threats of glide bombs, or dealing with new type of thermobaric weapons, or dealing with at every stage of the war, there have been new difficulties, and maybe they haven't been completely overcome. It's not like the threat of glide bombs is gone, but there have been adaptations. There have been ways to soften the blow of these new technologies, and there have been ways to keep on surviving and living on to see another day. And I think that Ukraine has survived this long is a testament in and of itself, and I think shows a weakness in the Russian narrative as an extension of the Russian world. Because if it was an extension of the Russian world, it wouldn't be 3 years of this horrific violence for the Russians. It wouldn't be like this. It would have been a lot simpler. It would have been a lot quicker, and then they would have been able to get control over the country. I mean, in the way they put it, quite easily. But I mean, even if somehow they took Kiev tomorrow, which they won't, that narrative has been shown to be, I mean, it was shown to be a lie many other times, but it's been shown for the world for the first time, in my mind, because people don't know the Ukrainian People's Republic, but the world, I think, for the first time has paid attention to say, oh, it's very clear that the Ukrainians are a separate people. They are their own nation. And I think that is something that the Russians can never take back, no matter how hard they try. And that is something to, I think, be proud of. Now the question is just making sure that it is not, you know, the people who's fighting is now children's responsibility to pick that up next time, trying to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and finding a long-term solution, which means Russians out of Ukraine, in my mind. We'll see.
Thank you, Dylan. Starsky?
Basically, my bros said everything. Don't be afraid to win. Ukraine is not collapsing because it was predicted like 3 years ago that we will collapse in 3 days. So there are good tendencies in Europe. In the United States, not so much yet, but we will see. What I would like to say is something related to you guys personally, to all the people watching us. Good guys gotta stick together. We have great example of how it's done. You see Georgie, you see Mercado not punching each other, not like cursing or, you know, sticking pins
I'm not
into like
kissing you
voodoo
anymore,
dolls.
Starsky.
We'll see. We'll talk about it.
Kisses revoked.
But you know, back in my days when I was a sergeant, we had this problem when you have a lot of dudes in the same tent, and there are always conflicts between them, and you should stay above it and understand that the combat worthiness of your platoon, your company, your battalion depends on how you cooperate together and how you are ready to forgive like small shit that always happens in a huge group of people between personalities. Good guys got to stick together, and we already have good examples, and I'm sure that we will win because we are united. That is our main and biggest weapon against Russian disinformation, against everybody whose motivation is built on hate, because we can unite and we can be active. So that's just my thought. Thank you so much.
Of course, and thank you, Starsky. And yes, mission first. That is what's most important in the very end. Ukraine is fighting for its independence. I feel like what we're seeing right now in the United States is just more of Russia's influence. I mean, they're getting paid by Russia. I know ATP Geopolitics really wanted to go in on like domestic American politics because I feel it personally. I felt it this whole time connected to the war. I mean, I'm an American. I went to Congress multiple times to try to pass bills to help Ukraine, and I knew which specific politicians were like against that to the point of platforming Russian propaganda. So it's been very, very passionate subject for me, but I support Ukraine because it's just the right thing to do, right? We have security agreements with them, but at the end of the day, it's like a moral thing for me, all right? I mean, I've been covering it since day one, the atrocities that Russia's committing and continues to commit. Make sure you guys follow Dylan Burns because he's exposing that on his YouTube channel. And Kirsten, Georgie from Ukraine Matters does daily updates, same with Operator Starsky. So make sure you guys go and support those two channels. I just want to shout out Operator Starsky, Dylan Burns, Preston Stewart, Georgie from Ukraine Matters, Anna from Ukraine, ATP Geopolitics, Greg Terry, Philip Ittner, Anastasia, Ukrainian Anna, and Rick the Ukrainian for joining us. Preston and Philip were not able to actually connect, but I do have one statement really quick from Preston Stewart to read to everybody before we go. He said, "My apologies to everyone for not being able to make it today. I was really looking forward to this chat Andrew put together with all of you, but my computer had other plans. I've long been fascinated with military history and studying war because it seems to be the only event that truly brings out the best and worst in mankind. These last 3 years have proven that true. We've seen unspeakable evil brought by Russia on Ukraine, evil that I thought we moved past 80 years ago. And far from the battlefield, we've all seen the cruelty from behind computer screens as people safe in their homes around the world mock and joke the loss of life. At the same time, the courage and tenacity of the Ukrainian people is like something I've never witnessed. In every interaction, I'm humbled by their attitude of never giving in and never giving up. The people of Ukraine deserve the support of the free world, not that they should have needed to, but that they've certainly earned it. I look forward to the day that Russia is humbled and forced back into their territory, that Ukrainians are able to return to their home and continue their lives that were interrupted. When that day comes, hopefully sooner than later, I expect we'll be flooded with stories of valor, courage, and sacrifice that will serve as an example to the people around the world for generations to come. Thank you, Andrew, and the panel for your continued hard work and organizing it. To everyone you're speaking, to all of you, please reach out anytime if there's anything you ever need that Preston can do to assist you in your work in any way. So that is a message from Preston Stewart. He apologizes he cannot be on the panel. But again, guys, thank you so much for your time. The Dylan, Operator Starsky, Georgie from Ukraine Matters, and everybody that joined us. Please go and subscribe to their YouTube channels. They're all linked in the description, and we'll interact further. You guys have a fantastic rest of your day.
You too, Merc. See you guys later. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. All right, guys, take care.
Okay.
Wowzers. Look at that. Look at that. We did a whole streamy stream. How's it going, chat? How's it going?